With the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State.
But you know, as they say, hail to the Redskins. Let's roll, man. Let's go.
Welcome, all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I've been corrected on that, but I'm going to keep saying it anyway because it just sounds good. It feels good, even though it may not actually be correct. Shoot me, all right? I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Luke. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. So, live, by the way. Okay, we live and in color. And a lot of stuff to get to tonight. Biggest thing I want to do is talk about the defensive end position. And to me, this is the catalyst. If you're a Redskins fan and you're somehow hoping for a miraculous season where the Redskins compete for not only the division, but a playoff spot, you know, it's going to probably be driven by the defense more likely than not. Obviously, Dwayne Haskins is going to have to play well on the offensive side. However, it's probably more likely than not going to be driven by the defense if the Redskins are very good in 2020 or even just competitive. Maybe it doesn't always amount to wins, but if they're in ball games, more times than not, it's going to be led by their defense. And let's get even more specific. If this defense is much improved like we think they have a chance to be in 2020, all right, it's going to start up front. And it's going to start probably with these defensive ends. You like to lump the entire line in there and say, look, these defensive tackles are going to be problematic as well. And they're going to be a huge part of the reason why the Redskins are able to turn it around defensively. But let's be honest. The guys that are putting pressure on the quarterback are going to be the biggest difference makers. These defensive ends are where it starts and where it ends with this defense. I know everyone wants to talk about the defensive tackles, and rightfully so. They're the only thing we can lay claim to at this very moment. They're the only guys that actually have tangible, actual production in this league, okay? But when you look at the future of this Redskins defense, when you look at the future of this Redskins football team, this organization, I think the defensive ends are where it starts and ends for the moment. Now, obviously, we're going to get to a point. If both of these guys blow up, and I'm talking specifically about Montez Sweat and Chase Young, if both of those guys blow up, you're probably not going to be able to keep both of them. You're going to probably have to choose one or the other. It's not going to be financially feasible to hold on to both of them. It's not how this thing works generally in this league. I mean, the Chargers are a great example. They're going to be up next year. Both Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram are both going to be up, and they're going to have to make a tough decision. Either they're going to re-sign one and franchise the other, or they're going to franchise one, let the other walk, or they're going to sign one to a long-term deal, and the other one's going to walk. Either way, it's going to be tough to keep that tandem together. You saw what the 49ers just had to do with their two behemoth defensive tackles. They kept one, signed him to a long-term deal, traded the other because they knew there was no way in hell they were going to be able to keep both of them. So that's a ways down the road. We don't need to think about that right now, but let's hope that that's a problem that in 4 years we're going to have to deal with, where we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with, you know, either Montez Sweat and or Chase Young. But for the meantime, let's just be excited about what these guys could potentially bring for the next few years, and we're hoping it starts in 2020. So we will talk about the defensive ends on this roster and how many we think they're going to keep, who are those guys going to be, and what impact can these guys have, not just in 2020, but potentially moving forward for this organization. And look, when's the last time the Redskins, and I just want you to think about this, I'll let this marinate for a little bit as we start getting into some other things. When's the last time the Redskins had a guy, and we all know the answer to this, okay? When's the last time the Redskins had a guy that Madden was interested in, that the national media cared about? The NFL cut a promo with all the players, the important players, that talked about Black Lives Matter. And you know what? Generally speaking, the Redskins don't belong in that promo that they cut, all right? Because we don't have a guy that resonates with the national media, that they see his face and they know who he is. And if they were putting up a marquee, he'd be on it. Now we do, because we have Chase Young. Okay, so the last time was back in 2012 when we had Robert Griffin III. Okay, we don't have these guys very often. Hopefully he lives up to the billing, but I tell you what, we got a guy that could potentially put us back on the map. Let's hope that that is in fact the case. We also want to talk about an issue that I've been running from, because frankly, I've been down this road before. I really don't need to revisit it. I've done this. It's old. It's tired. I knew this was coming. We talked about it briefly last week, but it's gaining a little bit more steam. More Redskins fans are approaching me, hitting me up on socials, asking me my opinion. Have I seen this? Have I heard that? Did I see this person said this? Did I see this happen? Do you think they're going to change the name? Do you think the Redskins are going to fold under the pressure of the name controversy? We'll touch on that tonight as well. So with that being said, we had a chance to hear from Ryan Kerrigan. We had a chance to hear from Terry McLaurin. We had a chance to hear from a number of guys. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited about the young fellas. I'm actually excited for Ryan Kerrigan. It's kind of bittersweet. I've been trying to trade this man for the last year and a half. I know a lot of you have wanted him to stay put. And then there are a nice sized portion of us that would have liked to have seen the Redskins move on from Ryan Kerrigan. When I hear him talk, I feel bad for wanting to ship him out, but it's a business, okay? And he's one of those guys. I remember a while ago, Adrian Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals, and Joe Thomas is another guy that this reminds me of. Guys that were with perennial losers their entire career, but they were phenomenal football players. All pros and Pro Bowl players, and you know, the rest of the team stunk for the most part. And on their particular side of the ball, they were the one guy that was holding it together. They were the linchpin. Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald was there for for the entire time Adrian Wilson was an Arizona Cardinal. But nonetheless, when you look at Adrian Wilson's career, the Cardinals weren't very good for much of his career in Arizona. And he wanted to be around when things started to turn around. And right towards the tail end of his career, he had a chance to leave, but he's like, I feel like this thing is turning in the right direction, and I want to be here. I suffered through all those years of us being horrible. I want to be here, and I want to actually be able to see it when it turns around. And he hung around just long enough to where they got to the Super Bowl back in 2008 against the Steelers. Weren't able to win it, but I kind of get those same vibes from Ryan Kerrigan. Same thing with Joe Thomas in Cleveland with the Browns. He wanted to stick it out, but he finally said, you know what? I've had enough. I thought this thing was turning around. It's not. I don't need this anymore. I'm a Hall of Fame player already as is. I'm out of here. But I kind of feel like Ryan wants to stick it out because he thinks, he's talked to Rivera, and he kind of gets this sense that things are changing and it might be for the better. And he suffered through all the losing seasons. He suffered through all the different coaches and all the losing seasons and all of the organizational unrest. He's been here for all of it. And he just wants to see this thing through. And I'd love nothing more than to say, you know what, Ryan, you're cool, man. Stay here. That'd be okay with me. But, obviously the numbers are going to really be the thing that tells the story here. The Redskins aren't going to move him, I don't think, in terms of releasing him or asking him to take a pay cut this year. If they were going to do that, they would have done it pre-free agency, or had they signed, I think if they had signed Amari Cooper to that monster deal, then I think things would have gotten pretty interesting with Kerrigan in terms of maybe asking him to maybe take a pay cut this year, because that $11.5 million that he's being paid, probably too much money for him at this point of his career. But being that the Redskins have a ton of cap space, they're not hurting, they didn't sign anybody to any massive deals in free agency, they've got a ton of money laying around, so I don't think they're going to approach Kerrigan. They're going to allow him to play out this final year of his deal. Now, if he wants to come back after this season, things will get pretty interesting. I think he wants to stay here. His roots are here in D.C. now, has a home here. He's established himself as a member of this community. I think that he wants to stay in Washington, but, we'll see. if the dollars don't make sense, he'll probably end up elsewhere finishing out his career. But again, that's another story for another day. So without any further ado, I want to jump into the comment section. But before I do that, I do want to quickly set the table. If you haven't listened to the latest episode of the Louis T Network podcast, go ahead and check that out. Newest episode is up and available. Also, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the Louis T Network if you haven't already done so. With that being said, 3 ways to contact the show tonight. As always, super chats come first, and generally they dominate the show, so I apologize in advance if you're trying to call in or if you're leaving a comment and I don't get to it. Super chats they rule the day. And so they come first. You want to have your comment read. You want to have a topic discussed. The easiest way to do so is through super chats. Then the next form of communication is the phone lines. And speaking of which, there's the number on the screen. So if we have no super chats, we go to the phone lines. Numbers on the screen. Just a couple of items that you need to check off of the checklist before you make the call. Make sure your phone is the volume is up all the way so we can hear you. Make sure that the monitor you're watching this show on is down in terms of the volume so that we don't hear the echo in the background. And make sure that you're concise, know what you want to say, and are able to get straight to the point so that we can answer your question or react to your comment and move forward. And then lastly, the comment section. Guys, behave yourself, all right? Use the hashtag LouisTLive if you want your comment read on the air. We don't have any super chats. If we don't have any calls, we then go to the comment section. Generally, these shows are about 2 hours long. Once we get to that 2-hour mark, if we don't have any more super chats, then we get out of here. So that's generally how these work. And so at some point I will cut off. If someone kind of leads me into it with the super chat, then we'll jump into the defensive ends. We'll talk about those at some point, and I'm thinking someone will bring it up about the name. We'll talk about that tonight. If no one does, I'll bring it up myself at some point so we can discuss it, put a lid on it, and move forward. There's going to be a lot of chatter and discussion about the name. Ultimately, I don't think anything's going to happen, but we will talk about it at great lengths tonight and hopefully put it to rest. So with that being said, let's get to the comment section. I see we got some super chats, so I want to jump to those right off the bat. We start with my man, Rob U. What's going on, Rob U? Thank you for the super chat, Rob U. As always, getting the night started. Rob writes, what up, Lou? What do you think Ryan Kerrigan's production would have been if he was in a 4-3 his entire career? I think Ryan Kerrigan would have been right around where he was. Like, I think a 4-3 defense definitely would have benefited him better, but I mean, at the end of the day, what you're essentially talking about is Ryan Kerrigan with his hand in the dirt versus Ryan Kerrigan standing up. If it makes that big of a difference, okay, cool. But, it's not like he didn't have his hand in the dirt, most of the time anyway. I mean, the Redskins, again, they're in their nickel package 60 to 70% of the time anyhow. So it's not like he didn't have his hand in the dirt. It's not like, him being in a 4-3, a base 4-3 defense was going to just transform his game and turn him into this superhuman pass rusher. He would have probably been much of the same guy. And let's be honest, when you look at Ryan Kerrigan's numbers, they're really good numbers. Don't get me wrong. He's just not a dominant player. But those numbers over the life of his career are pretty damn impressive. And I don't know if they would have been that much better had he been in a 4-3 defense. I mean, honestly, let's just say for the sake of saying, had the Redskins been in a 4-3 defense his entire career, he probably would have had his hand in the dirt 100% of the time versus, let's call it 60% of the time throughout his career. Or 60, 70%, whatever the case may be. And so, maybe you add a couple more sacks, maybe, 5 to 10 more sacks, maybe. But honestly speaking, I don't think it would have made that much of a difference, to be honest with you. At the end of the day, if he's a much better pass rusher, we'll find out this year. with them playing a 4-3, we'll see if it makes that much of a difference with him with his hand in the dirt. But again, we got to see Kerrigan with his hand in the dirt quite a bit. When the Redskins are in an even front and they're in their nickel packages, we got to see Kerrigan with his hand in the dirt quite a bit, and it didn't look any different than him rushing out of a 2-point stance, to be honest with you. So I don't think it would make that much of a difference. But as I mentioned, Kerrigan has been a really good football player, and honestly, he's been a core Redskin for the 8 years going into his 9th season, I believe now. For the duration of his career, he's been a core Redskin. One of the few guys that has been accountable, one of the few guys that we knew week in, week out, he was going to be there. 91 was going to show up, and he was going to give us everything he had. And we haven't had many of those guys throughout this stretch. So much respect to Ryan Kerrigan and what he's been able to accomplish in this league. But at the end of the day, I don't think it would have made all that much difference, to be completely frank with you. Thank you for the super chat, Rob. You. Got another super chat. This one from my man, Brian Haynes. Thank you for the super chat, Brian Haynes. Greatly appreciate you. Brian writes, Lou, would you be surprised if Jordan Brailford does well in practice and gets a spot on the roster? No, I would not be surprised. Jordan, remember last year, and I don't know if you guys remember the draft breakdown I did of the Redskins 2019 draft class, which included, of course, Dwayne Haskins and Montez Sweat as first rounders, but Jordan Brailford was actually the final pick in that draft. So easy to forget him because he was at the tail end of a draft that we were extremely excited about, but really didn't worry about the back end of the draft as much as we were excited about the front end of the draft. However, Jordan Brailford was a guy that I told you, and remember, him and Jimmy Moreland were both 7th rounders last year that I told you I thought had some potential in this league, and I was excited about both of those guys. So when I look at Jordan Brailford, and you watch him back in 2018 for Oklahoma State, he was a dominant pass rusher. And you saw some things off the edge. You saw a guy with some juice that could win off the edge with speed and quickness. You saw a guy that could bend and dip and rip and finish around the edge. And there were some qualities there with Jordan Brailford that I was excited about. And I said, wouldn't surprise me in the least if not only he made the roster, but had an impact early in his career. And obviously he got injured. Redskins put him on IR. We didn't see Jordan Brailford last year. Now we're going to get a chance to see him. And, I keep talking about that, no one's tied to the organization. The guys that drafted the players that are here aren't here anymore. Well, there is one guy that was a huge part of the draft that is still here. And, of course, that's Kyle Smith. And so with Kyle Smith still being here, there is a little bit of, of a tie to some of these guys that we think, they could be just whisked away. Now, we don't know how much input Kyle actually had in the draft. We still think that Bruce Allen was the one pretty much pulling the strings when it comes to draft picks, but I know Kyle Smith had a huge part, in assembling the board. I don't know if he actually was the one pulling the trigger. That we would always hear about this Redskin grade and these are Redskin picks and Redskin decisions, yada, yada, yada. They were Bruce Allen decisions for the most part. So I don't actually know how much Kyle Smith is invested in some of these players that are on the roster currently. But I think Jordan Brailford is a guy that, he's got talent, man. And no, it wouldn't shock me. As a matter of fact, I can tell you this much with 100% certainty. I like him way better than the Redskins 7th round pick this year, James Smith-Williams out of NC State, okay? And they drafted him to come in and compete for one of those defensive end spots as well. And if you're talking 7th rounder versus 7th rounder off of the tape, the guy with the most talent is Jordan Brailford. Now, the guy with the probably with the better set of measurables is James Smith-Williams, but this is a guy that can't stay healthy and a guy that didn't have the production to match the measurables and the athleticism that this guy has been able to display. So I'll take Jordan Brailford, the guy that has the athleticism and the production to match, versus the guy that just has the athleticism and some of the measurables that you look for. So we'll see what the Redskins decide to do, but keep in mind, James Smith-Williams is a guy that this group drafted. Jordan Brailford is not. So if it comes down to a tie between the two of them and everything is equal, you probably know who's going to get the nod if this staff has to make a decision. So thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Brian Haynes. Got another super chat here from my man, Rob U. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, Rob U. Greatly appreciate you for doubling up. My man, Rob U writes, Lou, I know Chase Young is the grand prize, but I can see Montez Sweat going off this year. Thoughts on how good he can be? You know what was funny? I was watching a little bit of Montez Sweat on tape because I was watching a player from another team's draft this year, and I had to go back to 2018 to watch some tape. As a matter of fact, the player was Willie Gay Jr. Out of Mississippi State. And you know what's crazy is this past year in college football, and I hate to go off on a tangent. You know I can do this sometimes, and I'll try to keep this short and sweet. But last year in 2019 in college football, to me, the best defense in all of the nation was Auburn's defense. They had a bunch of NFL talent. They had guys that were dominant, and they were the team that made LSU work the hardest for what they got. I thought that team in 2018 was Mississippi State. And when you go back and look at that roster, man, was it loaded, stocked, and chocked full of NFL talent. And not just NFL talent, NFL first rounders even. I mean, that team was loaded. It had Simmons on the defensive line that went 19th overall to the Tennessee Titans. They had Jonathan Abram on that defense who went in the first round to the Oakland Raiders in the 20s somewhere. They, of course, Montez Sweat, who we took 25th overall in the first round. And then they had a bunch of other guys that either went later in the draft or, went this year in the draft, like Cameron Dantzler, who was drafted in the second or third round, and Willie Gay Jr., who was drafted in the second round by the Chiefs, which is why I was watching that Alabama game from 2018, and I was watching Sweat, and I was saying, my goodness, this guy's a freak. And so, it just reminded me all over again because at times last year, he kind of got lost in the sauce, and we saw him start to kind of lose that deer in the headlights look towards the end of the season, and him kind of realize, I belong here, all right? I earned this. I belong here. I can play in this league. And I always remember Chris Cooley saying that he had that aha moment in his rookie season when he realized he could play in this league. And I think his actually came in the preseason. But nonetheless, for everyone, it's different. And your aha moment that you can play in this league may not come till year 2 of your career or year 3. It just varies with everyone. But I think Sweat somewhere around week 12 or so had that aha moment. And maybe it was when he got his first sack. And it took a while. We remember we were on Montez Sweat sack watch for like the first 8-9 weeks of the season before he finally got one. But once he got one, they started to come in. And that Dallas game to wrap up the season was a great culminating finish to his season. It was a great culmination of a guy that started to get it towards the end. And I'm hoping it carries over. And I, like you, think that this guy is supremely gifted. Remember how excited we were when we got him last year? Hell, some of us were more excited about getting Montez Sweat than we were Dwayne Haskins in the first round last season, So, I'm not going to lie to you, I was one of them because I wasn't the biggest Dwayne Haskins fan when he was drafted initially. So, I am now, though, and I see the promise. I see Dwayne Haskins, and look, I've never said he wasn't talented. I just thought that there were a lot of issues with him, and I thought there were other guys that were better. Now I feel like this guy's determined. He has a chip on his shoulder, and I think we're going to see that talent that we saw at Ohio State when he threw 50 touchdowns over 8 interceptions. But back to Sweat, watching him on tape just kind of reminded me of why I was so excited about Montez Sweat. This guy's long. He's uber athletic. And I think once he starts to put some of these moves together, and that's what we started to see at the end of the season, he stopped relying on pure athleticism, which is what he did at Mississippi State. And he started to put some technique to that athleticism. And that's when guys start to figure it out. In college, if you're a supremely gifted athlete, you can just use your athleticism or your strength or the combination of the two to beat guys, because most of the guys you're going up against aren't NFL players, so you can dominate them. But as you get to the NFL level, everybody's good. And so now, just pure athleticism and raw strength isn't going to get it done snap in, snap out. It'll get it done sometimes, but it's not going to get it done the vast majority of the time like it did in college. And because of that, you got to be able to start using some technique. And I think we started to see that towards the end of the season. He started to come with a little bit of a rush plan. And I'm excited about Montez Sweat. And remember, if you remember what I said, and I may end up walking this back, I waffle between Chase Young or Montez Sweat in terms of the sack leader in 2020. I told you initially I think it's going to be Montez Sweat. So that goes to show you I think he's going to have a breakout year. But, man, if Chase Young is what I think he is, and I think teams early on in the season are going to make him prove it. They're not going to double team him right off the bat. He's not going to come into the league with the respect of, oh, we got to double team Chase Young. They're going to make him put up a 2.5 sack game first before teams say, okay. 99 won't get us. All right, we're going to have to chip. We're going to have to double team. We're going to have to keep the tight end in. We're going to have to back on your way out. Make sure you get a piece of 99. But that's not going to happen right off the bat. And so somebody's got to get blessed before that happens. I'm hoping it's week 1 with the Eagles right off the bat. 3-sack game to announce himself to the rest of the league. And then from that point on, he'll probably see double teams and chips and things of that nature and more attention paid to him. But whatever the case may be, I've got Montez Sweat as the Redskins 2020 sack leader right now. If Chase Young comes out of the gate like gangbusters, I'm probably going to walk that back. So I'm telling you right now, look for that to come if Chase Young shows me what I know he's capable of very early in the season. But I do think that Montez Sweat has a chance to be dominant in 2020, which is going to be great for everyone else around him if, in fact, that takes place. Thank you for that super chat, Rob Yu. Got another super chat here from Barrett Downing. My man BD, thank you for the super chat as always, BD, who writes, what's up, Lou? I can see our DN tandem going off this year. I can too, man. The magic number for a DN tandem is 20. If you can get 10 apiece from each guy on opposite sides, you feel like you're killing the game. Now, we've got a chance, whether it's Chase with 12 and Montez with 8, to get 20 in our sleep. I think we've got guys that can get 20 easily. I'm going to raise the bar for those guys. I want that number up around 24. So that's 12 apiece. Or if Chase goes off for 14 and Montez is following up with a 10 spot, I'm all for it, man. I'll take a dime bag from Montez and a 14 piece from Chase. And man, if you got that kind of production from just 2 guys, imagine what the rest of the defense is doing. We know Matt Ioannidis is good for 8 sacks. I think Jonathan Allen is at the point of his career now where he's poised for, a 10.5 sack season. He's getting up there. He's around 7.5, 8.5 every year now. So he's poised to have one of those 10.5 sack seasons or so. And so when you start looking around at the rest of this defense, Kerrigan is a guy that can chip in, and he's going to be a lot fresher this year because remember, this was a guy that was an Iron Man. He rarely came off the field. Now he's going to be probably seeing spot duty. And if that's in fact the case, he should be coming in the game like gangbusters, ready to tear some shit up. So I'm looking at all of these guys and I'm thinking as a collective group, why can't we get to 60 this year? That's the number where you're doing it. 50 is the magic number every team goes into the season looking to accomplish. If you can get to 50 sacks, you had a pretty damn good year as a unit. If you get to 60, you had an elite season getting to the quarterback. And so why can't we get to 60, man? If Taz is putting up a dime, if Chase is putting up a dime, that's 20 right there. You're going to get some linebackers blitzing, they'll get a couple of sacks. Why can't we get to 60? And I think it all starts. If you start talking crazy and you want to throw out some big boy numbers like 60 total sacks as a team, it starts with your defensive ends. Because they're going to be the guys that set the table. They're going to be the guys that are the high water marks. So I'm with you. The DNs definitely could go off this year. And it starts with Montez Sweat and Chase Young up front, and you kind of go from there. And so if those guys can eat, I think everyone else will start tucking their napkins into their shirts and look to have a feast as well. Thank you for the super chat, Barrett Downing. Got another super chat. This one is from my man, JP. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, couldn't be more ecstatic about our edge rushing tandem of Young and Sweat. Dexter Manley and Charles Mann 2.0 perhaps. I hope so. I don't like to make those type of declarations nor put that kind of pressure on anybody. That was the last real tandem that we've had off the edge. If someone wanted to be petty, they could bring up Andre Carter and Marcus Washington. But seriously, though, you'd have to go all the way back to Dexter Manley and Charles Mann if you wanted a twosome off the edge for the Redskins that was dominant. And so I look at, these two guys, and I think they've got a chance. And the beauty of it is they're both so young that they get to grow together. You know what I mean? We get to watch the best of these guys for at least the next 4 years. What happens after that, who knows? Montez Sweat will be, a free agent at that point after 4 years. I'm assuming the Redskins will pick up his 5th-year option, worst case scenario. But, who knows? What'll happen, what'll transpire between then and now. But at the end of the day, I'm excited to watch these guys go after it. And, I haven't had this level of excitement for Redskins defense since the Greg Williams days. We haven't had anything to really be excited about. A lot of fans every year talk the same nonsense, top 10 defense, top 5 defense. And I'm like, we still don't have that havoc-wreaking pass rusher. I was hoping Montez Sweat was going to be that last year, but I told you he was raw. I wasn't expecting him to jump into the fray last year and tear it up. I wasn't expecting him to, take 8 weeks to get a sack either, but I wasn't expecting Montez Sweat to jump into the fray and just start bagging quarterbacks because I didn't see that on tape. I saw a guy that was winning off of pure athleticism. I didn't see a guy that had much technique. And so I knew it was going to take a little bit of time for him to adjust and adapt to the level of competition that he would see at the NFL level because he wasn't using any technique. He wasn't using a rush plan. He was just simply trying to beat guys around the edge with speed and length. And so I said, that's going to work sometimes, but more times than not, it's not going to work. These guys are really good. They've seen speed before. They've seen length before. They know how to handle it. So I still was like, we can't be a dominant defense until you get a dominant pass rusher. Like, it just doesn't happen in this league. You want a dominant defense, generally, there's got to be a dominant pass rusher, or as a collective group, you got to be able to get after the quarterback consistently and get off the field on third downs. Like, the Patriots don't have a dominant pass rusher, but collectively, they get after the quarterback and they're able to get off the field on third downs. We haven't been able to do that, and we don't have a dominant pass rusher. So, now we have that guy. Now we have someone that offensive coordinators have to scheme to try to stop. And because of that, now I'm starting to entertain, reckless talks of top 10 and potentially top 5. I don't think that's taking place this year, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility as a Redskins fan to think that if this thing clicks with Jack Del Rio pulling the strings, that we can't be somewhere near the top 10. All right, I don't actually think that's going to take place. Again, let me reiterate that, but I would not be shocked if the Redskins finish this season like 12th in overall defense. And I'm not a yards guy, so that's not the stat that I'm looking for. The stat that I really like to hone in on, particularly, is points per game given up. And, some of that can be misleading because, you might give up a touchdown, but the drive started from, your 12-yard line because the offense fumbled. And so now you're guarding 12 yards of grass before that team is able to get in the end zone. But that's the stat that I look at because guess what? Sudden change of possession, the best defenses in the league, they step up, they bow their back, and they force you to kick a field goal. So, in certain instances, they take it away themselves. They get it back. So, at the end of the day, I want to see where the Redskins finish there, in terms of points allowed and, third down defense. These are the categories that I like to focus in on because those are the ones that win you and lose you ball games at the end of the day. Can't get off the field on third downs, not going to win very many games. Can't keep teams from scoring up over 24 points a game, not going to win very many games. The magic number always for me is keep teams under 24 points a game. If you can do that consistently, because if you're a true NFL offense, you should be able to score over 24 points a game. All right? If you can keep the opposition from scoring 24, you give yourself one hell of a shot. I like my chances. I give my team a 70% chance to win the game if they can keep the opposition under 24 points. And most of the time, the better defenses in the league are able to do that. So I'm looking forward to watching this Redskins defense with these edge rushers. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Got another super chat here. Thank you for the super chat, Farrah Cody. Greatly appreciate it. Farrah writes, why don't you join the NFC East YouTuber talk? I don't even have an idea of what that is. I have no clue. So I can't even begin to tell you why I haven't joined because I don't even know what it is. I mean, I can kind of surmise what it is. I don't know who's in it, what they do. I remember this, and I'll make this very brief. When I first jumped on to YouTube, when I first started this back in 2012, there was something called the TTC on YouTube. All right. And it was the trash talk community. And these guys, all they did was talk trash about each other's team. They would make videos. They would eat crow if they lost, and this, that, and the third. And that's not my scene. That's not what I do. But, I would watch it from afar. At times, it was very entertaining. But, they started to overstep their boundaries. Guys started taking it out of context. And before you know it, the TTC was no more. If that's what that is, if that's a semblance of that, I don't want any parts of that. Now, if it's actual, fans of NFC East teams that are giving, good opinions and they're having really good dialogue with one another, and yeah, there's going to be some back and forth banter. Obviously, you like the Eagles, if I like the Redskins, yeah, we're going to talk trash, but, it's got to be more than that. And if it is, I might be interested in hopping on to something like that. But, I have no idea what it is. So thank you for the super chat, Farrah Cody. Got another super chat. This one is from 316 CTW. Thank you for the super chat, 316 CTW, who writes, what's up, Lou? Would you consider doing pods with NFC East podcasters? I've seen others do it, no comment, but I think you would be best to rep us because you actually know your stuff. Yeah, I'm open to doing anything, just about. Again, I always want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is tactfully and tastefully done. But at the end of the day, I'm just about open to doing anything because, anything that's going to allow this platform that I have to gain even more exposure, or for me to just be able to drop knowledge on people about the Redskins or the NFC East or the NFL in general, I'm all about it. You know what I mean? So I'm definitely open to doing whatever. You know what I mean? And I've always stated that my thing is, if you want to collaborate, you got to reach out and you got to do it ahead of time. And if I've got the time and if I can carve out some time, I'm all about it. I've jumped on streams with other people before. I've jumped on with Law Nation over there on his channel with Law Thomas on Law Nation for the Dallas Cowboys. I've jumped on. I was just on with Ed Oliver not too long ago. I mean, I've done, when BFG was up and running, I used to jump on with him all the time. So I do it. And I just got reached out to by a Giants YouTuber this past week. I'll tell you what his name is. He seems pretty popular too amongst Giants fans, so I'm really anxious to jump on his show and chop it up with him. He said he was doing a show this summer and he was, interested in, me potentially coming on. And I don't want to say his name because I don't know. He might not want all of that information out there. But at the end of the day, I said all of that to say this. I'm definitely open to doing shows with other people. I don't want anyone to think that I'm not. I'm just extremely busy, as you guys know. I not only just cover the Redskins, I cover the entire league. And so I'm usually preoccupied doing something, whether it's Redskins related or something with the podcast or it's something with the league or, I'm stretching a bunch of different directions. But I can carve out time if someone approaches me. They just have to do it in advance. So I'm definitely open for business. And so, I'm definitely open to doing other shows with other YouTubers and podcasters. Thank you for the super chat, C316CTW. Got another super chat. This one from Rob U, tripling up. Thank you for the super chat. Tripling up, Rob U, man. You are the man. Greatly appreciate you, Rob U, who writes, does Landon Collins regain Pro Bowl form this year? I think he can. And, the thing with Landon Collins is he can't do it by himself. It was not much else on the defense last year, especially in the secondary. It was pretty porous last season. And so Landon Collins isn't a guy that can carry the load by himself. He needs help. And so, if Landon Collins is a really good player when he's amongst other really good players. When you think about that season that Landon Collins had, that Pro Bowl year where he had like 4 interceptions or whatever that number was, and he had over 100 tackles and he was all over the place. Think about some of the guys that was on that defense with him. You had Jack Rabbit on one side. You probably had DRC on the other side, and that defense was really good. You probably had JPP coming off the edge, and they probably were a formidable defense. That might have been the Giants team that went to the playoffs with the whole boat incident that lost to the Green Bay Packers in Wild Card Weekend, if I'm not mistaken. And they were probably really good that season. If it wasn't that year, it was the year previous to that. Either way, good football players around him. When you put good players around Landon Collins, he can then shine. All right, but he's not the star. He's a complementary piece that can act as a star if given the right weaponry around him. So he's not Batman, but he can be Robin if put in the right situation. So I think this year will be a really good season for him. If the guys up front, if that front seven is as havoc-wreaking as we think they can be, it's going to allow a guy like Landon Collins the ability to roam the football field a little bit more freer. Maybe Jack Del Rio has a plan for him to be up towards the line of scrimmage a little bit more, where he's a lot more impactful. I think Landon Collins is at his best when he's closer to the line of scrimmage than away from it. So I'd like to see them utilize Landon Collins as a run blitzer, going after the quarterback as a blitzer, underneath zone coverage, things of that nature. I think that's when he's at his best. So I think Landon Collins is definitely a guy that could have a really good season. But again, we said all of that, and we kind of work our way all the way back to the original statement made at the top of this show. The guys that are going to set the table are off the edges. The guys on the defensive line, if you want to use them as a collective group and a unit, that entire defensive line is going to set the table for the rest of the defense. As they go, the rest of the defense goes. If the guys up front are dominating and they're having, a hell of a season, guys like Landon Collins and Montez and Thad Moreau and guys like that are going to be the biggest beneficiaries. Those are the guys that are going to make plays. Sean Davis and some of these newcomers like Darby and Kendall Fuller back in the mix. These are the guys that are going to benefit the most if those guys are hitting home. Quarterbacks are going to have to speed up their process. They're going to make ill-advised throws and decisions. Things are going to get a little hasty for them up front, and that's going to benefit the guys on the back end. So a guy like Landon Collins can definitely see an uptick in his production if the guys up front are doing their job. And let's just know this. Landon Collins was really good last year. Just want you to understand that. Just because we weren't good as a defense doesn't mean Landon Collins wasn't good. He was good, was Landon Collins. One of the few guys on this defense that could actually say they played well last season. All right. So don't lump Landon Collins in with the stink and the funk that was the Redskins defense last year, because he himself played well. Now, was he a difference maker? No. All right. He wasn't. But I told you when we got him, I don't know if Landon Collins is a true game changer by himself. You know, I've never gotten that impression. He's not Jamal Adams. He's not Tyrann Mathieu. Those are the guys. He's not Earl Thomas. Those are the guys that when they were in their prime, and Tyrann Mathieu was in his prime, we saw the impact that he had going from Houston to Kansas City. I don't want to say he single-handedly took that Chiefs defense and made them good enough to win the Super Bowl, but he was a huge part of the reason why they became a much better defense. All right? A massive reason why they got better. That's not Landon Collins. He's not a guy that comes in and instantly your defense gets better because of his presence. But if guys around him are good, it makes him that much better, and now he becomes a guy that you got to look out for. So I'm hoping he's able to get back to that level of play this year. Thank you for that super chat, Rob. Got another super chat. This one from my man Chris Zacharias. Man, Chris Z, thank you for the super chat. Chris writes, "Sup, Lou? Predict our team's sack total in game number 1 versus the Philadelphia Eagles." So, you know, that's Carson Wentz. And that's never a good matchup for us. They just lost their guard, Brandon Brooks, which is a huge loss for them. So you're hoping that you may be able to take advantage of that. They also will be having, more likely than not, maybe Jason Peters goes back and ultimately starts week 1 for them. But if not, Andre Dillard is the man that they're going to task with being their left tackle of the future, and his journey starts officially week 1 versus the Redskins. I'm excited about that as well, because that could be some nice fresh meat for Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and company. I'm just saying. So when you look at that Eagles offensive line, they're a really good group, one of the best in the business, but they've already got one link missing. You add in a brand new piece in Andre Dillard, and I'm looking around and I'm saying, hey, man, could this be a little bit of a coming out party week 1 to announce ourselves to the rest of the league? Maybe. But then, even if you get past their line, there's still the whole matter of actually getting number 11 down, which has been something that we have struggled to do very mightily, I might add, in the past. Carson Wentz has made us look like fools just about every time we've played them. And I go all the way back to 2018. We all remember the crazy play week 1, as a matter of fact, at home, no less. Or that was 2017, excuse me. At home versus the Eagles, week 1. We thought we had him bagged up. He somehow gets through, throws a bomb up to Nelson Aguilar. This is early in the game. I think it might have either been for a touchdown or like a 40, 50-yard gain down to like the 5-yard line. I think it ended up being a touchdown. He destroyed us that game as well. They ultimately beat us in week 1. Remember, that was a game we thought we could have won. You know, that one sucked. Then there was 2018, that Monday night game where Colt McCoy goes down. That was the game that, you know, for all intents and purposes, that was the season. I felt like if we were going to win the division, remember, we were 6-3. Alex Smith gets injured versus the Texans. We lose on Thanksgiving, quick turnaround. Colt McCoy comes in, actually plays pretty well against the Cowboys, but we ultimately lose. He throws a couple of interceptions. We lose to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. And then the following week, we play the Eagles on Monday night. And I remember doing the Colt McCoy video where I said, hey, you're counting the Redskins out. You know, don't sleep on Colt McCoy. He's the real McCoy and all this nonsense. And, you know, 2 possessions into the game, he breaks his foot. And I remember we were still in the game. Remember, Adrian Peterson had that 91-yard touchdown run, and we were hanging tough, you know, with Dirty Chez at quarterback. Man, is he trash, or was trash. But anyway, we were hanging tough, and then Carson Wentz on a 3rd and like 11 or so. You know, the whole pocket collapses. we think we're getting off the field, and somehow out of this rubble comes number 11, ducking and dodging and stumbling his way out and scrambles for like 20 yards in a first down. And that was the backbreaker. They go down, score a touchdown, put the game out of reach, and coast from there. Last year, look, I didn't want to win this game, but Dwayne played his ass off. And so here we are, tooth and nails. We're scratching, clawing with the team that's leading the division. And he makes a play late in that ball game. He's rolling out to his left. He's being harassed, and he just throws it up in the air to Greg Ward, of all people, an ex-quarterback that mosses on Josh Norman for the game-winning score. They had nobody at receiver that game. He was magnificent, and they beat us. And I wanted them to beat us. I don't say that very often, but we needed to get Chase Young. You can't suck in vain. And so while that was a touchdown that needed to happen, it was still another example of Carson Wentz taking a dagger, sticking it in our back, and twisting it before then pulling that dagger out, cleaning it off, shining it up and saying, my Redskin dagger. Always going to have one of these with me. So I said all of that to say this. Carson Wentz has not been a guy that the Redskins have been able to get onto the ground very often. That being said, I think the Redskins can get 5 sacks in week 1 versus Carson Wentz. I think 1.5 of those sacks will be from Chase Young. I think 1 of those sacks will come from Montez Sweat. I think a half a sack will come from both Allen and Ioannidis. And I think Kerrigan gets a sack as well for a 5-piece for the Redskins in week number 1. So thank you for the super chat, Chris Zacharias. Greatly appreciate that. I got another super chat. This one from Take That. Thank you for the super chat. Take That. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, my hopes of an elite pass rusher died with Brian Orakpo. Hopefully Sweat and Young reach their potential. I understand that. I get that. I never thought Brian Orakpo was elite. Never thought he was going to be elite because his hips were tight. He was too tightly wound. Brian Orakpo had a problem turning the corner. What his famous move was? Speed and then rip. But he couldn't dip. His hips were too tight. So he couldn't bend that corner. So what tackles would do was just put him in a chokehold and put him to sleep. In the first couple of years of his career, he'd get that holding call. He'd get that penalty call. Remember, he got that penalty called against the Cowboys at the very end of a game. They were going to beat us. I think we ended up winning that game. It was atrocious. It was a Sunday night game, I think. We ended up beating them like 9-7 or 13-7 or something. It was bad. Anyway, they scored the touchdown that would have given them a chance to beat us on the final play of the game. And what ends up happening, that was the game D'Angelo Hall picked up a fumble right before halftime and runs it back for a touchdown. And I think that was the only touchdown in the game scored by the Redskins. And I think they kicked 2 field goals and ended up winning that game like 13-7 or something. Man, was that a bad game. Anyway, remember, Orakpo draws the holding penalty at the end of that game after the Cowboys scored the touchdown that would have tied it and they would have had a chance to kick the extra point to win. Instead, they backed up 10 yards. We were able to get the stop and preserve the victory. He used to get that call in the first 2 years of his career. But after a while, the officials said, all right, bro, you got to come with a new move, man, or else we're just going to let these tackles put you to sleep. And eventually, that's what they ended up doing, just putting his ass in a chokehold and putting him to sleep. And he didn't have another move. Brian Orakpo didn't have an STP, speed to power. His thing was speed. And if he couldn't win with that, there was no spin move. There was no crossover. There was no long arm of the law. He didn't have a move Rolodex. There wasn't a bunch of tools in his toolbox. And so I never thought he was going to be elite. But again, much like Kerrigan, you'd look up at the end of the season and Orakpo would have 10.5 sacks. And people thought he was really good. And I'm like, 3.5 of those sacks came against the Rams with a third-string left tackle that he was able to abuse. You didn't watch him all season long. He struggled against NFC East competition, and So I get it. But Chase Young is not that. Montez Sweat, the jury's still out on him. But as far as I'm concerned, Chase Young is the real deal. You should get excited about Chase Young. If he doesn't succeed somehow, some way, and we'll knock on some wood for that because I just don't see that happening, but just knock on some wood anyway. Then you can say all hope is lost for an elite rusher here in Washington. But Chase Young is that dude. He's that dude. You should be excited about Chase Young. Thank you for the super chat. Take that. Got another super chat. This one from Extra Squaw. Thank you for the super chat, Extra Squaw, who writes, thoughts on us trading for Jamal. I know we already have Landon who plays the same position, but I would trade him and a second or third for Jamal. First of all, the Jets aren't taking anything less than a first rounder. They don't want your players. They don't want your draft capital and a player that's not a first round pick. Now, if you said, hey, we'll give you a first and Landon Collins, they'd do that deal. But nobody's giving up that kind of deal for him. They want a first round pick for Jamal Adams, and they might want extra, and it may cost you a player, They might say, hey, we want a first round pick and we want Ryan Kerrigan, or we want a second round pick and we want Montez Sweat. That's the kind of, they're asking for a ridiculous deal. And they should. I mean, this guy's a difference-making safety in this league, and there aren't many of them walking around in the league right now that can do what this guy does and impact the game the way the guy does. So they're asking for a ton. I don't think the Redskins are looking to give up what they're asking for. And furthermore, I'm pretty sure you saw the list of teams that he said he'd be willing to be traded to. Now, that doesn't limit the teams that the Jets can do business with, but if a player tells you, I want to be traded to one of these 7 teams, what he's essentially telling you is, I don't want to be traded to the other 25 teams in the league. And if you do, I'm going to make it a problem. Similar to the way Antonio Brown bitched and moaned and complained when he found out he was about to become a Buffalo Bill, and that trade got nixed. Nobody wants to trade for a player that doesn't want to be there. Jamal Adams made a list of 7 teams that he'd love to be traded with. Traded to, I should say. We weren't on that list. So as far as I'm concerned, if the Redskins were even entertaining the thought of picking up the phone and making a phone call, that died when that list came out because he doesn't want to be a Redskin. Now, the Cowboys were on that list. All right. I think the Eagles were on that list. We weren't on that list. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. Okay. I think that list was, 7 teams, all of them contenders in some route, 49ers, Ravens, Seahawks, Cowboys, Texans. It was those types of teams. We weren't on that list. I'm cool with that. I'm good. And don't forget, not only are you going to have to part ways with draft capital, you got to pay this man. That's the reason he wants out of New York, is because he can't get the deal that he feels like he deserves from the Jets. You're going to have to break this guy off and make him the highest paid safety in football, and it probably isn't even going to be close. So I don't think the Redskins are looking to do that. And if I'm them, I'm not looking to do that. He's a hell of a football player. I'd love to have him, but not at the price it's going to cost and the price it's going to actually take to get him here, and then the price it's going to cost to keep him here. I don't see the Redskins signing up for that, and honestly, neither would I. Got another super chat. This one from 99 Problems, Chase Ain't One. Love that name. And you're right. We got 99 problems, but Chase Young isn't one of them. Thank you for the super chat. He writes, HTTR, simple. All right. Sup, Lou? I love the channel, bro. Thank you. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for blessing the platform, and I really appreciate you, man. Thank you for your support. Got another super chat. This one from Rashad Brooks. Thank you for the super chat. We were just chopping it up today, earlier, as a matter of fact, man. What up, Rashad? Appreciate you checking out the stream. You said you was going to check it out. Glad to hear from you, man. My man Rashad writes, what up, Lou? Just showing some love. Thanks for responding on IG today. Keep up the great work. And I just talked about the fact that we chopped it up earlier, man. And I appreciate you, Rashad, man. Anytime. I apologize for seeing your message so late and responding so late. I should have responded to that a lot sooner, but in any event, man, it was good to chop it up with you, and I'm glad you're here, and good hearing from you, man. Really appreciate you, Rashad Brooks. All right. Let's see if there are any more super chats. If there are not, then I think this is a great time to take to our defensive end discussion. And so, got a super chat. I'm going to take that after we jump into this defensive end discussion. And so, I want to go through the defensive ends on the roster right now. Currently, the Redskins have 8 defensive ends on the roster. I think when it's all said and done, that number is going to be trimmed down to either 4 or 5. I think it could get as high as 5, but no less than 4. So it's one or the other. You know, if they're keeping 5, I think it's an easy decision. If you're keeping 4, that's when things get a little dicey, if you ask me. But when you look at this list of players, I'm excited about it. I haven't been this excited about the defensive line in forever. I'm going to just be honest with you. Even with the Greg Williams defensive teams, we didn't have a defensive line that scared anybody, you know. So this is a different group here. This is something unlike we've seen as Redskins fans in close to 30 years. So this is difference. This is difference making right here. And so we'll start with the guys that I didn't even put on the marquee because they're not going to make the football team. They don't even stand a chance, barring some kind of unforeseen circumstances. 2 guys in particular, Ryan B., who we all know as a guy that played well in the preseason for us last year and may even have played the last 2 years in the preseason. But I know for sure last year there was a debate on whether he should make the football team or not. At the end of the day, we're in a position now where a guy like Ryan B. shouldn't be on our roster. I've said this before. I'll say it again. We're now at the point where we should have enough talent. And I know we're not the most talented team in the league, but no longer should we be one of those teams where a guy that has no business being in the league on an NFL roster, on a 53-man roster at the beginning. Now, a guy like Ryan B. might end up playing because of injuries. It's a war of attrition. Guys go down, and you bring up a guy like Ryan B. from the practice squad. That's understandable. But to start off the season, Ryan B. should not be making your 53-man roster, and I don't think he will. But he's intriguing because of his length and his size at 6'8", you know, and long arms. He's a guy that is very intriguing, but Ryan B's not making the football team. Neither is Cameron Malvo, okay? So that's another guy that right now is on the roster out of Houston, second-year player. Can't see any way in which Cameron Malvo makes this football team. And so you just quickly take those 2 out of the mix and you focus on the final 6 guys because those are the guys that legitimately have a shot to be on this roster. There are a few locks, and then there are 3 guys really battling it out for 1 or 2 spots. So we'll get to those guys first. And the first guy that I want to talk about is the guy that was drafted in the 7th round, James Smith-Williams, out of NC State. I've given you a thorough breakdown of him, but I'll pull up my notes real quick and talk about James Smith-Williams. For those of you who need a refresher, I need a damn refresher myself because I know he dealt with a ton of injuries at NC State, not a lot of production. All of those things ring true to me and ring in the front of my mind, but I still need confirmation on some of the other things that I saw from him on tape. So 6'4", 265 pounds. As I mentioned, he looks the part of an NFL defensive end. 34-inch arms, which is ridiculous for an edge rusher. So that's another big coup for him. 4'6" flat. He tore it up at the Senior Bowl, which is where I think he got on the Redskins' radar. I think that's where they fell in love with him and decided that if he was around late in the draft, they were going to take a flyer on him. This is a guy with 28 reps of 2 1/4, which that's very impressive for a guy with 34-inch arms. Normally, when you got longer arms, it's harder to pump that iron. I know that for a fact because I'm a guy with longer arms. And so it makes it a lot harder for you to get that weight up. You know, shorter arms, quicker up, down, but long arms, long way to go. And so 28 reps for a guy with those those kinds of arms, that length, pretty damn impressive. So for his career, 12 and a half sacks, 8 sacks for his career, 12 and a half tackles for loss. But 9.5 of those 12 and a half tackles for loss came in 2018. And 6 of his 8 career sacks came in 2018. So really, he had 1 year of production at NC State. I put down in my notes real quick: exciting physical and mental makeup, extremely explosive, twitchy mover with closing speed, uses his length well at the point of attack, and effective bull rush against lesser tackles. All right. But then his weakness is he doesn't shed blockers after stacking, has no moves in his Rolodex whatsoever. So you're getting a guy that has no rush plan, that has no variety. I mean, if you go to his menu of moves, he's got a bull rush and he's got a speed rush. I can get that in one combo when I visit his restaurant, eat that, wash it down with a bull rush, and never come back again because there's no more items on the menu. I've tried everything. I don't need to come back. So he doesn't have much in the way of getting to the quarterback. Little to no production outside of 2018. I just explained that to you essentially. And then injury concerns. This was the big thing. I think some teams just probably took him completely off their board because of his injury situation. This was a guy that 3 out of his 5 years in college ended his season with season-ending injuries that required surgery. So this is a guy that has been battered and bruised. And he was 196 pounds when he showed up on the campus at NC State before transforming his body to 265. So, maybe some of that has to do with the fact that his body type isn't supposed to be one of 265 pounds, but he created this body type, and maybe his body is having a hard time adjusting to it. I don't know, but not a lot here with James Smith-Williams. So not a guy that I'm all that excited about, but obviously this staff saw something in him that prompted them to pull the trigger on him in the 7th round. So he's not to be dismissed. I want to see him on the field, and I want to see him in action before I dismiss him and say that he's not going to make the football team. Because if there are 5 spots, best believe that he, and more likely than not, Jordan Brailford will probably be battling it out for that final spot. Then you get to the other 7th round pick, but from 2019 and not the 2020 draft, that being Jordan Brailford. This was a guy that put up numbers at Oklahoma State, as I mentioned. A guy that has everything you're looking for, has the size, has the athleticism, has the ability to bend and dip and rip the corner, has some juice off the edge. I was excited about him. If you remember my breakdown of Jordan Brailford last draft season, I told you I was excited about him. I was looking forward to seeing this guy play, and then he gets injured, and we really don't get to see him at all. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again. And I don't think the injury that he sustained last year was that great to the point where he couldn't have come back. I think the Redskins just didn't want to expose him to waivers, because if they cut him, teams would have had a chance to pounce on him. And I think they felt like if we allow this guy to be released and hopefully try to get him to clear waivers to put him on the practice squad, someone's going to scoop him up. And to avoid that, they just put him on IR. I think he had like an ankle sprain. Like, it doesn't take you a full year to come back from an ankle sprain. They could have said, hey, Jordan, heal up, and we'll bring you back if they really wanted to. But I think they didn't have a roster spot for him. And so instead of risking him out on waivers, they just put him on IR. So I'm looking forward. It's not like he had a serious injury. I'm looking forward to seeing Jordan Brailford compete. And I think if they're keeping 5, that's where that last spot is going to end up going, is to Jordan Brailford. I really believe that. But, if they keep 4, then it becomes really interesting, because now you got 3 guys battling for 1 spot. I've given you 2 of those guys. The third of that trio would then be Nate Orchard. And Nate Orchard, if you remember, Nate Angry Orchard, all right? If you remember, the reason he's here is because of what he did against Carolina in Carolina that ultimately helped Ron Rivera get fired and land here in D.C. He went nuts against the Carolina Panthers. Remember, he was signed 5 days before that game. Was barely knew anybody's name, no less. the plays or anything. I remember that third down stop he had against Christian McCaffrey, which if not for Nate Orchard on that play, he walks into the end zone. That was a hell of a play by Nate Orchard. He didn't even know where to line up on that play, if you remember. He was walking around and he didn't know. He was trying to tap the guy next to him to find out what the hell his responsibility was. And then he lined up. And I think it was actually that confusion by him and the subsequent not lining up before the snap that really helped him end up being in the right spot at the right time. And he stonewalled Christian McCaffrey at the goal line, drove him back, and ultimately saved the game, because if he doesn't do that, the Panthers are going to beat us. So Nate Orchard had a fantastic game. I think he had 2 sacks in that game-clinching or saving stop there. And then remember, he helped, along with Chris Odom, provide the pressure on that final snap where Kyle Allen ran backwards like 10 yards, and then ultimately I think he ended up taking a sack there, and the Redskins preserved the victory. So Nate Orchard, I think, ended up getting that 1-year deal that he signed with the Redskins based off of what they saw from him in that game. Rivera remembered that guy that tore us up. What was his name? And Kyle Smith said, "Oh, you talking about Nate Orchard? Yeah, bring him back. That guy has some juice. He's got a little something off the edge. Bring him back. I want to see that guy. I want to see more of him." So Nate Orchard has a chance. And remember, he also, and don't discount this, he blocked a kick versus the Giants. You remember when Dwayne went down and shit was going downhill for us in that game? He blocks a kick that helps the Redskins get back into the game with Case Keenum. And if you remember, Keenum ends up, I think, quarterback sneaking in a touchdown or bootlegging a read option, a touchdown, whatever the case would be. I remember he had a rushing touchdown. That, I think, came off the heels of the blocked punt by Nate Orchard. So Nate Orchard, not only a guy that can help you on defense, also gives you a little something on specials as well. Don't discount that and the importance of it either. So those are the 3 guys that I think are battling for potentially 2 or 1 spot. These next 3 guys are surefire locks on this football team. It's not a matter of if they're making a team. It's where they're going to play and how much are they going to play. You start with the elder statesman of the group, Ryan Kerrigan, the longest tenured Redskin, I believe, on the roster now. When you look around, I don't think anyone's been here longer than Ryan Kerrigan. I think Trent Williams had that distinction initially, if I'm not mistaken. I think Williams came a year prior to Kerrigan, but he's no longer on the team. So I think by default now, Kerrigan is your longest tenured Washington Redskin. And I think he's still got something left in the tank. I really do. And I know last year was a very frustrating season for him. He had never missed a game, rarely misses any snaps, let alone a game. And last year he dealt with a concussion and he dealt with numerous injuries. And it was just a frustrating year altogether for Kerrigan. And, you listen to him talk on the Zoom call and you hear a guy that is motivated to come back and show people that he's not washed and that he belongs here. There was a lot of talking. You'd be a fool to think that these players don't hear a lot of the noise that goes on, outside of the building. And there was a lot of talk by people like you and me and people outside of this market about possibly trading Ryan Kerrigan, about his time being up in Washington. And, there were some diehard fans that were like, hey, I love Kerrigan so much that I want to see him get a chance to win. It's not going to happen here. Trade him to a contender. There were people like me who were just like, hey, to hell with all that sentimental stuff. We got a chance to get some real value for him at the trade deadline. If we can flip Kerrigan for a 2 right now, do it. And that would have been the most ideal thing because he ultimately ended up breaking down at the end of the season. But, I was all on board when we heard teams like the Colts and the Ravens that were really interested. I don't know if they were going to give up a 2. I think the best you fetched for Kerrigan was a 3. But I would have taken a 3. I would have. I'm sorry. I know some of you may not agree with that. I would have taken a 3rd-round pick for Ryan Kerrigan. But that being said, at this point now, he's here. He's ours. I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Kerrigan 2.0 in this new scheme and what that means for him. And really, more so than the scheme, I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Kerrigan in this new role because this is going to be a reinvigorated Ryan Kerrigan and one that should be full of energy coming off the bench. Not one that's playing 60 snaps every game, but one that rather is playing, more like 25 snaps a game. And that Ryan Kerrigan should come off the bench ready to get to the quarterback, and really create some problems. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Ryan Kerrigan in this new role because maybe a fresh Ryan Kerrigan is a dangerous Ryan Kerrigan. And who knows, maybe Kerrigan's the guy that ends up with double-digit sacks and kind of jumps out of nowhere. And all of a sudden in the offseason, we're saying, hey, we got to bring Ryan Kerrigan back. There's no way we can let him leave after a dominant 12.5 sack campaign because not all 12.5 sack seasons are created equal. All right. There's the Ryan Kerrigan, 12.5 sack season where you're like, oh, okay, 2 versus this backup, another 3 in this one game versus this backup, 1 here, a half a sack there, another sack and a half against this backup on another team. But when we needed him the most, nothing, crickets. And then there's a different type of impactful 12.5. Game on the line, you put all your pass rushers on the field and Kerrigan gets a game-clinching sack. And he's doing the showstopper. All right? Or it's a crucial 3rd down late in the ball game. Redskins need a stop to get the football back to have a chance to win and kick a game-winning field goal. And Kerrigan gets to the quarterback, gets the sack. They punt the football. Redskins ultimately get in the field goal range on a beautifully led game-winning drive by Dwayne Haskins, and D-Hop puts it through the uprights from 39 yards, and the Redskins win in thrilling fashion. And you look back at that sack that Kerrigan had on 3rd and 8 that put this game away, and you say, okay, yeah, Kerrigan's doing the damn thing this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Kerrigan does in this new role. And let's be honest, it's a contract year. If it's not here, it's somewhere, right? You want to get paid? You better produce at a high enough level that someone is willing to fork over the type of cash that you think you're worthy of moving forward. So not only is he looking to prove that he still got it, he's looking to prove that he deserves another payday from someone, if not here, elsewhere. Then you get to, of course, the 2 main attractions, the main event, the tag team back again. All right. But it's the first time around for these guys. And we start with the second-year guy in Montez Sweat, who I think a lot of us feel like is poised to take that step forward in Jack Del Rio's system. And I think more so than Kerrigan, he might actually benefit from a 4-3 defensive scheme. I didn't think he had a problem standing up in a 2-point stance, and he did it a lot at Mississippi State. But with his length and his quickness, him with his hand in the dirt might actually not be a bad thing for him. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I think we saw signs of a guy that was starting to get it in Montez Sweat towards the end of the season. And it's that kind of confidence. And I talked about this before on the show, and you've heard guys that have played in the league tell you this too. There's not much difference between a lot of these guys in the league. There are a couple of big differences, though. Some guys are much more athletically gifted than others. We understand that. But if all things are equal, with some of these players, and for a lot of these guys, things are equal. That guy's a great athlete. So is this guy. This guy's comparable, and they're all similar size. There aren't many things that really separate them from a physical standpoint or an athleticism standpoint. So what's the biggest difference? And that's when you start getting into the minutia of things. And technique is definitely one, but really it comes down to 2 things. Your fit in a scheme, how someone uses you. Look, you can take one player and put him in 7 different defenses, and you may get 7 different outputs from that guy. He may be absolutely unblockable and dominant with these 3 teams over here. With these next 2 teams, he's all right. Not all that. Not a guy that really scares you, but he can put up some numbers. And then with these last 2 teams, he's absolutely horrible. And it's the same player, but different schemes. And then the next thing is simply confidence. That's one of the biggest differentiators in this game is confidence. This guy knows what he's capable of. This guy isn't quite sure. He's on the fence about what he's capable of. Doesn't have the same confidence that this guy has. Even though he may actually be more talented, this guy is more confident. And because of that confidence, he's able to go out and make plays. And so I think we started to see Montez Sweat doubt himself less and be a lot more confident towards the stretch run of the season. And I'm looking forward to seeing that guy start the year off instead of waiting before he picks things up. I'm looking forward to seeing that guy start the season and really produce some numbers. And again, I would not be shocked if Montez Sweat leads the way in 2020 in terms of a sack count for the season. But, you know, I saw some crazy stuff out there in terms of the next guy on this list. And, of course, I saved what I perceive to be the best for last. And, of course, the Predator himself, Chase Young. This is a guy that I saw on Twitter from somebody, you know, over under on 30 sacks his rookie season. I'm like, all right, get out of here. All right, seriously. But, you know, the sack record for a rookie is 15 and a half sacks. I'm not saying that that's within reach, but I'm not saying that it's out of reach either. You know, I don't think he's going to jump in and have 16 off the bat, right out of the gate. You know, I would lose my mind if Chase Young comes into the league and because I haven't seen 15 in a Redskins uniform in my life. I've never seen that with these two eyes. I've been dying to see something like that in a Redskins uniform. I've seen guys on other teams do that, and I've always said to myself, man, I want one of those. I'd like one of those. That would be really awesome to have one of those. I've seen other guys do it. Hell, Chandler Jones is doing it every year for the Arizona Cardinals. That must be a lot of fun. You know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a guy, Shaq Barrett, who I wanted the Redskins to sign in free agency last year. He had 19 and a half sacks last year. I was like, man, that could have been us. We had the foresight. $5 million is all it took to get you 19 and a half sacks last year. Who knew? I did. Damn it. But I digress. I want one of those. It may not come in 2020. Okay, and I'm fine with that. I'm actually not looking for it. It'd be nice if it came, okay? But I'm not actually looking for that. What I am, however, looking for is signs of dominance. If I can just get that, I will leave 2020 a happy man knowing what's to come is going to be pretty damn nasty for the rest of the NFC East and really the rest of the NFL in general. I just need to see signs and flashes of dominance in 2020, you know? And ultimately, if he shows enough of them, he will be double teamed. He will get chipped. The good ones still find ways to bag quarterbacks. But he's a young guy, and he'll have to adjust. And remember, last year at Ohio State, towards the end of the season, what happened? He got held. He got double teamed. He even got triple teamed. I showed you the film on him getting triple teamed in the Big Ten championship game versus Wisconsin. Teams weren't going to allow Chase Young to beat them. If he comes in the league and starts wrecking shop, teams are not going to allow him to beat them. So he's going to have to learn what Von Miller, what Khalil Mack, what Chandler Jones and the elite rushers in this league have learned to do. And that's learn how to still get to the quarterback, getting chipped and getting double teamed. There are ways. It's harder. It's a lot tougher. Ask Aaron Donald. All right. There are plays where 3 guys are assigned to Aaron Donald. And I can tell you countless times watching the Rams over the years, he's getting double teamed and he's still winning and he's still applying pressure consistently through a double team. If you want it bad enough, you can get there. I think Chase Young will eventually evolve into a guy that will be able to destroy doubles as well. But I don't think he's there yet. So I just want to see flashes of brilliance, of dominance. If I get that in year number 1, I'm going to be a happy man. Anything else I get is going to be icing on the cake. But I just want to see, if this is an 8.5 sack season but there was a 3-sack game in there, and you saw the dominance. And then for the rest of the season, teams said, no, that won't be us. And we start seeing a steady diet of doubles and in certain cases, triples, where he might get chipped on the way out, 2.5 blockers assigned to him. I'll be okay with that because I know it's there. And eventually he'll figure out how to get around, because I keep telling you guys this, because some of you, if Chase Young doesn't come out of the gate with 12.5, you're going to be like, oh my God, this guy's a bust. Some of you are crazy like that. All right. Some of you use the B word way too casually. All right. Bottom line is, Khalil Mack had 4.5 sacks his rookie season. It doesn't always happen right off the bat. Okay. So understand that it could be a 10-sack season. It could be a 6-sack season. It could be a 16-sack season. All right. It's going to range somewhere in between those two numbers, I think. Anywhere from 6 to 16 sacks in his rookie season. All right. It's very doable. I don't see it happening, but, I think that number is going to be somewhere around 8 to 10 when it's all said and done. And I'm okay with that. I just need to see the dominance, the flashes of brilliance that lets me know that this guy is legit. But sky's the limit for this group here. And ultimately, if you're keeping 4, those 4 guys are probably more likely than not going to be Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, and one of 2 guys, I believe. It's either going to be Jordan Brailford or Nate Orchard if it's 4. If it's 5, I think Nate Orchard is definitely in as your 4th. And then you have a battle between the 2 7th rounders of the last 2 years and James Smith-Williams and Jordan Brailford. And which one of those guys impresses the most in camp and into the preseason and ultimately into the regular season is going to end up being your 5th and final edge rusher. But if they go with 4, I think it's a battle between Orchard and Jordan Brailford. But again, do not discount James Smith-Williams, because they drafted him this year. But if you ask me, you're more likely to see James Smith-Williams be able to be released, clear waivers, and the Redskins stash him on the practice squad than Jordan Brailford. You know what I'm saying? So I think the Redskins are cognizant of that. And worst case scenario, a lot of times it's not necessarily the best guy that gets kept on the roster, or it's usually the guy that you think you can sneak through to the practice squad. This other guy may actually deserve the roster spot better, but to you, on the outside looking in, if you look at it from an outside perspective, you're thinking to yourself, nobody knows what this guy's been doing in practice all off season. They don't know what we've seen. If we stick this guy on waivers, no one's picking him up. Even though he's been the more productive guy, we don't expect him to produce for us right now. So we can stick him on the practice squad, and when we need him, we can snatch him up. Now, if we release this other guy, there are a lot of teams that wanted him in the draft, and we just got to him first as a 6th-round pick. If we cut ties with him, someone else is going to snatch him up. And so we probably should keep this 6th-rounder and allow this other guy to hit the practice squad, even though he was the more productive of the 2 in camp. So sometimes it's a situation like that where a guy ends up making a roster where the other guy might have been more deserving. So I think that's the situation you run into with maybe a James Smith-Williams, where you're like, nobody's snatching James Smith-Williams up if he gets cut. And the Redskins want to put him on the practice squad, nobody's going to touch him, And so you'll get him, you'll get him back. So those are your defensive ends, man. And I'm excited about this group. Maybe as excited about this group as any on this team going into the 2020 season. And I'm really excited about the receivers. I am. I know people have been trashing our receivers. They don't think they're very good. I know a lot of people understand that they're young, but they don't think. We think they're young and talented. Everyone else thinks they're young and terrible. And there's a big difference. For me, I'm excited about the receivers. But I don't think I'm more excited for any positional group than these defensive ends. I'm excited about the defensive tackles. I'm not more excited about them than the defensive ends, though. This is the group that I'm most excited to see, and I can't wait. Bart Scott! Can't wait. So, with that being said, let's get back to the comment section, see if we got any super chats. And we do. So, got a super chat here from Barry Williams. Thank you for the super chat, Barry Williams. Greatly appreciate it. Barry Williams writes, I believe Matt Ioannidis is going to go off this year. I definitely can see Matt Ioannidis going off this year. Now, he's been building towards this. You know what I'm saying? More so than Allen and Payne, Ioannidis has had this slow trajectory up where three years ago or 2 years ago, it was 4.5 sacks. Last year, I think it was 3 years ago, it was 4.5 sacks. I think last year it was 7.5, and I think 2 years ago it was 7.5, and this last year it was 8.5. Or it might have been 4.5, and this past year it was 7.5, and now he's trending upward towards double digits. Either way, we've been seeing this coming for a while now. He's been one of the more consistent rushers on this defense. And now you add in a guy like Chase Young who's going to take away attention. Not that teams were paying that much attention to a guy like Matt Ioannidis to begin with, but I think now the Golden Greek or the Matt Ioannidis is going to now see, much like everybody else on this defensive line, going to see one-on-one matchups. And if you're good, go win, you know. And for the longest time, we haven't had enough guys that could win those matchups. Now I think we've got enough that if you isolate all of these guys one-on-one, somebody's going to win something, you know. And so Ioannidis is definitely a guy that I could see reaping the benefits of all of the playmakers around him. And he could be the guy that ends up eating the most when it's all said and done. I'm so excited I talked about Allen having a chance to get double-digit sacks this year. Ioannidis is a guy that has a chance to hit double digits for the first time in his career. We could even see an uptick in the production for a guy like Daron Payne, who hasn't really done much in the sack department to this point of his career. I'm excited to see what Tim Settle does, getting more of an opportunity in a even front this year. He may be able to start sniffing the quarterback a bit. And then you get to these ends, and I'm excited to see Kerrigan in a reduced role where he may even be reduced inside. Look, I heard Del Rio, and I understand what he's saying. All of these guys can't play at the same time. You're right. Not all the time they can't play at the same time. But why can't they all be on the field at the same time? There's got to be a package. There's got to be a package, or I'm going to lose it. Where you get Sweat, Kerrigan, and Young all in the field at the same time. There has got to be a package where you're putting your three best rushers on the field, and then you stick any of those defensive tackles you like, whether it's Ioannidis or Allen, to complete that group. There's got to be a package where all of those guys are on the field at the same time. Gotta be. All right? The best in the league do that. Find a way to put their best guys on the field all at once and force the other team to be able to block them all at once. I'd love to see Kerrigan inside on 3rd and long. I think his quickness and his strength can win inside against a guard. I just do. I would like to see it. So, anyhow, thank you for the super chat, Barry Williams. I do think Ioannidis could go off this season. Got another super chat, this one from my man, Vincent Coe. Thank you for the super chat, Vincent Coe. Greatly appreciate you. You a Seahawks fan, so I know you just showing some love, man. So I really, really do appreciate you, Vincent Coe, who writes, just sending some support, Lou. Let's get it. I appreciate you, Vincent Coe, man. Really do. And we go way back, man. It's been some years now that you've been kicking it with me, your man, Louis T. I greatly appreciate you, Vincent Coe. Thank you for the love. Got another super chat here. This one from Alan Nudis. Thank you for the super chat, Alan Nudis. Greatly appreciate you. Alan Nudis writes, Kerrigan for O.J. Howard. The Bucks aren't doing that. The Bucks aren't making that trade, because what you're essentially doing is, first of all, Kerrigan's cap number is 11.5. O.J. Howard's cap number is probably somewhere in the $3 million range. Like, the Bucks don't even have the cap space to take on another $8.5 million salary. So that kills the deal right there in itself. But let's even go a little bit further into that. Kerrigan's on the wrong side of 30. OJ Howard is going into the prime of his career, hasn't even hit it yet. They're not trading 30-something for a 20, let's call OJ Howard 26 maybe, 25, 26-year-old tight end. Not happening. That's not a fair trade for the Buccaneers, and doesn't make sense on their end. Let's see. Thank you for the super chat, though. Got another super chat. Greatly appreciate the super chat from my man GearCell1. We about to get a gem dropped on our melon. GearCell1, thank you for the super chat. GearCell writes, I believe Sweat will surprise Redskins Nation this season. Please tell Darryl Green to stop wearing a turtleneck with swim trunks. Turtleneck. The old turtleneck with swimming trunks, man. That's definitely a no-no. Or as Jay Gruden would say, a fashion foobar. Don't do that. But I definitely think that this is a season in which Montez Sweat could definitely do some work. And I'm looking forward to seeing Sweat year 2 because, as I mentioned, the end of year 1 was so impressive and you started to see a guy that got it. So now I'm anxious to see if he's able to put it all together and really start to take that huge monumental step forward that you like to see from your guy in year 2. The really good ones, if they started to get it in year 1, they take that gigantic step forward in year 2. I'm hoping we see that from Montez Sweat, and I'm really anxious. I'm chomping at the bit. First of all, let me say this, and I've said this on my podcast a million times, but let me reiterate this here. I so hope we get football on time this year. There are so many obstacles that easily could prevent us from getting football. I don't even want to think about it. I really don't. But, you see Dr. Anthony Fauci come out and say, look, man, if the NFL is going to play, they need a bubble just like the NBA. Like, you can't be having players all over the place, coming in contact with all kinds of people. It's bad enough they're going to have to come in contact with themselves, amongst themselves, on a weekly basis, but they can't be having contact with outside people and then coming into these facilities. It's just too many guys. It's too easy for an outbreak to happen. It's just so many obstacles that the NFL is going to have to clear for us to even get a season off the ground, and then once it starts, to keep it going. I won't be shocked if they start a season, but can they actually get through an entire season? I don't know, man. I just know I want to see football. I am jonesing. I'm finked up. I told you I can live without baseball. I can live without basketball. I'm a boxing fan. I can live without boxing. And boxing is already back. What I can't live without is football. And, I'm sitting here getting excited talking about Montez Sweat and what he could possibly do in 2020 and Matt Ioannidis. And I'm talking about Chase Young potentially breaking the all-time sack record for a rookie in his first season in the league. And I'm getting excited about all of these things. And I just want to see the fellas on the field donning the burgundy and gold. And that could realistically not happen in 2020. I mean, do you understand that we may not get football? Like, let's just knock on some wood here. I'm knocking on it extremely loud and long because I gotta have it, man. Football is my drug of choice. All right? I gotta have it. So I just needed to say that. So thank you for the super chat, GearCell1. Got another super chat here. This one from Hamdale, #Hamdale. Thank you for the super chat, #Hamdale. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I remember watching Charles Mann and Dexter Manley coming off the ends. I'm expecting that same level of excitement coming soon. I can't wait. #HTTR. Neither can I, and that's why football must take place. And I'm hoping that these other leagues get their situations off the ground so that the NFL is able to see what works, see what doesn't work, take bits and pieces from what everybody else does, and integrates that into their plan and comes up with the best plan possible to not only start a season, but to get all the way through, barring another, widespread pandemic, and this thing coming all the way back around and mutating into something different and really sending a second wave that we didn't see coming and bringing everything to a screeching halt once again. Outside of that, I want to see this thing not only start, but be able to finish. And it's because of comments like the one hashtag Hamdale just put up that pretty much talks about his excitement. I'm excited too, which is why this season has to happen. I haven't been this excited about a Redskins team. And know this. I don't expect us to win. Let me reiterate this. I'm still really excited to see this team because I know we're building something, And so I can't wait to watch. And I'm so excited. And it could not happen, So it's frustrating. But I, like you, Hamdale, can't wait to see this thing unfold. And you're right. We haven't had a tandem off the edge like this, potentially, since Manley and Man, Eminem. And so I hope that these guys are everything that we think they could be and then some. I really hope that the NFC East is in trouble. I really hope so. For years, Dak Prescott has been running all over us. For years, Carson Wentz has been creating Houdini escape magic tricks on us and just breaking our back. Like Mike Tyson, I broke my back. Carson Wentz has broken our back multiple times. I'm sick of it. I just want to be able to dominate somewhere in this division. I think we can get it done with our edge rushers, with our defensive line. We've spent the resources. Now it's time to see our fruits of our labor come to fruition. I just want to take a nice, juicy bite out of this fruit that we've been harvesting for years. All right? First rounder after first rounder after first rounder after first rounder after first rounder. All of these seeds that we've planted. I just want to finally go outside on that first round tree and pick off a fruit. Take a big ass bite, have juices dripping down my chin and say, man, that's some good fruit. We did good here. And I want to be able to do that year after year after year. We deserve it as Redskins fans. We've put up with so much mediocrity, it's not funny. We've put up with so much mediocre play that we get excited for things that other teams laugh at. It's time for us to be excited about something that the rest of the league would be excited about. It's time to have a guy that not just Redskins fans know about, but the rest of the league knows about. And when those primetime moments show up, that guy shows up. I think we may have a guy or two. And if those guys are what we think they are, they're going to bring friends with them. That's the beauty of having a dominant player. All right. That's the beauty of an Aaron Donald. That's the beauty of a J.J. Watt. When you get guys like that, generally they bring friends with them because now all the attention is on them. Got to stop J.J. Watt. Got to stop Aaron Donald. Got to stop Chase Young. Oh, yeah? Here comes Montez Sweat. Here comes Matt Ioannidis. Here comes Jonathan Allen. Here comes anybody else you could think of. All right, Ryan Kerrigan. Here comes Tim Settle. All right, here comes Deron Payne. All right, here comes Cole Holcomb on a blitz. We've got so many guys that can hurt you if this one guy is dominant. Or if it's Montez Sweat. Maybe it's not Chase Young. Maybe it's Montez Sweat. I really don't give a shit who it is. Maybe it's both of them. The more the merrier. But we deserve it as Redskins fans. We've put up with too much mediocrity over the years. We've put up with too much of it. We deserve a product that we can be proud of. Speaking of which, perfect segue to the name And we'll get back. I got a ton of super chats that I need to get to. So we'll get back to those in a second. But the name. All right. We've been down this road again. You know, I wasn't going to do this initially. I didn't have any desire to because I've been down this road before. I've done this before. Go back in my archives like 4 years ago when this name, controversy was at its peak. I've never seen it this highly debated before, to the point where I actually made a video saying, hey, maybe we should consider changing the name. You know, and I had a bunch of Redskins fans come at my neck like, how dare you, dude? We're not changing a damn thing. And so that's when all the polls started coming out and I started doing my homework. And I quickly found out that the people that everyone is saying has a problem with this doesn't have a problem with this at all. It's everybody else that's telling the rest of the public what they should be outraged about. It's this PC America that we've created, which in certain instances, it's good. Sometimes you need the PC police to come and police some shit. But sometimes you just need the PC people to sit down and shut the hell up. And this is one of those times where I'm like, hey, this doesn't even concern you. You mad for the Indians and the Indians not even mad about it they damn self. How you mad about something and the people that it's supposed to be affecting aren't even affected by it? They don't care. So why do you care if they don't care? I always tell my kids, I can't care about your grades more than you care about your grades. If you don't care about your grades, why should I care about your grades? I can't go to work and do your schoolwork for you. I can't get an A for you. You gotta want to get an A. And if you want it bad enough, I will help you get there. But if you don't care about your grades, why should I care more about your grades than you do? I'm not going to get paid for your grades. I'm not going to be rewarded because you got a C. You need to care about your grades. Why do other people care about somebody else being outraged about something that they're not outraged about? They're telling the Indians, you should be mad about this. You should be steaming mad. You should want them to change this name. And the Indians are like, no, actually my son goes to a school and their logo and their mascot and their nickname is the Redskins. Like, we're cool with this. Like, we're fine. We got other issues that are affecting the Indian community that are much bigger than the Redskins name. We're cool, thanks, but no thanks. We're good. And everyone's like, no, you should be outraged. We've been down this road before. And so I wasn't going to do this tonight because I've done this. I told you, go back in the archives. I've been down this road. And somebody brought it to my attention again today. And I'll tell you when it first started for me, coming back around again, because I knew once the Black Lives Matter movement came back stronger than ever, and I really think change is about to come. And we're seeing a lot of things change. You know, when Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben are being pulled off of shelves and they're going to rebrand, you know some shit is changing. So that makes me think, man, maybe the Redskins could be in trouble here, you know? I mean, but seriously, my friend hit me up, and he's a Raiders fan. He's not even a Redskins fan. And, you know, he follows football in the offseason, but really he just cares about his team. He's not worried about what's going on with the Redskins. And so he generally doesn't know, nor does he care what's going on with the Redskins. But he hits me up and he's like, yo, what's going on with the Redskins? I said, what you mean? What's going on? Ain't nothing going on with the Redskins. Everything's status quo here. I mean, a couple guys jumping on some Zoom calls. Ain't nothing really popping off. He's like, no, man. What's going on with the name? Y'all about to change it or what? Like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, you ain't seen all of this going on? I'm like, yeah, I've heard it. I've seen a little bit of it. But guess what? I've been here before. And guess what? When all of this stuff started to come up, the minute that George Floyd was murdered and we saw it on actual tape and we actually got to see it and people started rioting in the streets, I knew it was only a matter of time before this whole wave came back around and then they started picking off shit that was on the list. The Redskins name will always be on the list. No matter what happens, no matter how many times Dan Snyder says, not changing the name, leave me alone, it's going to remain on the list of shit to get done by people who have an agenda. And so it never went away. It was always on the list. It was just down the list a bit. But, you know, after we start checking off some of the shit that's at the top of the list and we start coming down the list, we going to come back around to the Redskins name. All right? So eventually I knew this was going to happen. All right, there were some other issues out there that people were going to be outraged about first, and they were, and they took care of those, and they were going to come back around. And they're not done yet. But I said they're going to come back around to the Redskins name eventually. And I waited, and finally, here we are. I knew it was coming. And so I said, there's a shitstorm that's coming. It's going to be a big one, okay? Because the people that are outraged, PC America, they're really, really getting shit done right now. I mean, if you talk out of turn and you work for a corporation, you're liable to be fired tomorrow. The shit is real. Watch what you say on socials, or watch your step. Because people out here, you make a mistake, one step, kaboom. Black suits fill the room with your job. All right? Damn, man. Richard was a hell of a guy, man. But Richard came out of his mouth wrong on socials yesterday. He had to pack up his box and go. Much faster than slow. So, PC America is winning right now. So, that puts a team like us and our name in jeopardy. But, guess what? This is a privately owned entity. Owned by Daniel Snyder. He's the man in control. The league can't even force him to change his name. Now, what the league can do is put pressure on him. But again, this is the thing. The Redskins name has been through litigation and court situations and court proceedings as early as what? I think the 3 years ago, the Redskins won a big court ruling about the name and everything. And bottom line is, the name isn't going anywhere. So I don't get worked up about this stuff. I don't, because people are going to feel the way they want to feel. And they're entitled to their opinion. I'm never going to tell somebody how they should feel. All right? I can tell you that you're wrong, but I'm not going to tell you that you can't stop feeling the way that you feel. You know? I'm not going to tell you you need to stop feeling that way. If that's how you feel, proceed. You're wrong, but proceed. Okay? The Redskins name doesn't mean what it did once upon a time. And I the people that say, oh, it's like calling someone the N-word. No, it's not the same thing. Stop. It's not the same thing. Stop. Okay? The N-word is universally known by everybody that it's a bad word that you still to this day cannot say. Okay? You can't say it. Not one single black person thinks that it's okay for somebody else to call them the N-word, especially from a different race. All right? Not one. Now, in terms of Indians, nobody's calling an Indian a redskin anymore. People stopped doing it decades ago. Probably half a century ago. Nobody calls an Indian a redskin. You know what a redskin is? A member of the Washington Redskins professional football team. All right? That's what a redskin is. And my man Kevin Sheehan says it the best. There should be a second non-pejorative definition in the dictionary that states a player that plays for the team in Washington. That's what a redskin should be in the dictionary. Okay? Because if somebody, and this is the example he always gives, and it's the best example I've ever heard anyone give. And this is the discussion that, to me, puts it to rest every time. After you talk to Indians and they say they don't have a problem with it. If you go into a bar, all right, and somebody says, hey, 3 Redskins just walked in. Is someone going to say, 3 Indians just walked in? Nobody's going to say that. If you say 3 Indians just walked in here, 3 Redskins just walked in here, you know what someone's going to say? Who? Was Dwayne Haskins one of them? Like, that's what the response is. So for me, it's not really much here to see. Everyone's going to have their opinions. The mayor says, look, we want the Redskins here, but there's a huge obstacle, and that's the name. It's time for them to change the name. No, it's not time for us to change the name. It's time for you to start being open-minded about the name. But if you're going to continue on this crusade to have the name change, then we'll just have to put the stadium either in Virginia or it'll have to stay in Maryland where the hell it is now, and we'll have to just do what we have to make it do. But at the end of the day, it should be in D.C., and if there are hurdles to get over that we can't because of the name, so be it, whatever the case may be. All right, but at the end of the day, people are going to be outraged. To me, it hasn't even gotten close to where it was once upon a time. The last time we dealt with this, it had hit the ceiling. I thought that the name was going to change. I actually was in the market looking for different names. The easiest thing that I said was just drop the red. People call us the Skins anyway. Just the Skins. And, instead of the Redskin on the helmet, the old logo, just put the arrows back on the helmet and call it a day. That was my compromise back in the day. I don't want to change a damn thing. All right. And I get it. When you look at our history, it doesn't help because we had a racist owner. We were the last NFL team to integrate. And so when you look at the name and you look at the racist owner, yeah, I get it. I understand that there's context to everything, but let's understand that we evolve as people. Words evolve. The word Redskin has evolved over time. It doesn't mean the same thing that it did once upon a time. And the people that it used to affect, it doesn't affect them anymore. And some of them wear it as a badge of honor. So, for PC America to try to tell people what they need to be outraged about, I just, like I said, I leave that to them. I don't even try to get involved. I just know that Dan Snyder isn't changing anything. The one thing Dan Snyder has done well, and there hasn't been many things that Daniel M. Snyder has done throughout his entire duration as Redskins owner. But the one thing he has done well is he has been unwavered in his support for the name and the fact that it's not going to change. And I don't think that the transgressions that have taken place over the last, month or two are going to change that whatsoever, nor should it. All right. We're the Redskins. We are proud to be the Redskins, just like Penn State had to come out with a moniker saying, we are Penn State. We are the Redskins. And I'm proud to be a fan of the Washington Redskins. You don't like it? Fine. You don't have to like it. And honestly, I don't give a shit. I'm a Redskins fan, proud to be a Redskins fan, and you're not going to make me feel bad about being a Redskins fan. That's the way I feel. I'd love to hear how you guys feel. Let's get back to the Super Chats, though. Got another Super Chat. And this one is from Cameron Harris. Thank you for the Super Chat, Cameron Harris. Greatly appreciate you, Cameron. Cam writes, thank you for the awesome show. No, thank you for the contribution. Greatly appreciate you, Cameron. Thank you for your donation. Greatly appreciate that. Got another Super Chat. This one is from King of the North. My man, King of the North. What's going on with you, man? Glad to see you. Glad to hear from you. Thank you for the Super Chat. King of the North writes, congrats on going full-time with the network. Appreciate that, man. I really do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Chase Young is going to have more sacks than Mac did his first year because Chase Young will benefit from our D-line. Absolutely. It goes hand in hand. Khalil Mack was not playing with studs in Oakland his first year. It was just him and him alone. And, eventually his talents shined through and he eventually got it. What Khalil Mack came into the league as right away was an elite run defender. Like his first year, he was among the best at stopping the run. You couldn't even, by the end of his rookie season, teams didn't even run to his side. It didn't even make sense to run to his side. And eventually his pass rushing caught up with his run stopping. And by the time you looked up, this guy was an animal that was an all-pro at two different positions. Two different positions. Who's doing that? Khalil Mack was. Hopefully Chase Young is an all-pro at some point in his career as well. But you're absolutely spot on. Not only will others around Chase Young benefit from his presence, he himself will benefit from the presence of a Jonathan Allen, of a Montez Sweat, of a Daron Payne, of a Matt Ioannidis, of a Ryan Kerrigan. He's going to benefit from being around other good players too. All right, so it goes hand in hand, goes both ways. You're absolutely spot on. And honestly speaking, as a natural pass rusher, Chase Young is much better than Khalil Mack coming out of Buffalo. So I think just off the strength of that alone, Chase Young is going to have more than 4.5 sacks this season. So I think he's going to eclipse Khalil Mack's first season total as well. I completely 100% agree with that. Let's see if we got more super chats. And we do. Got another one from King of the North. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, King of the North. As you always do. Greatly appreciate you. King of the North writes, do you think the lack of crowds this year will help the Skins? Would you prefer to hear the players on the field or have crowd noise piped in? There is no possible way. And I've heard several players suggest that, hey, why don't you just mic us up? No. NFL can't afford to do that. Because honestly, we get them mic'd up on the field. You know, when they run past one of the NFL sound barrier things that picks up the noise, and you hear a curse word. You know, these guys, look, if you've ever played any sport, outside of baseball, and I was a baseball guy growing up, you know, everybody's respectful on the diamond for the most part. You know, you're not getting a bunch of FUs, MFers, you ain't shit, none of that stuff. But on a basketball court, a lot of trash talking going on, a lot of MFers, a lot of, shit this, bitch that. You get the same thing on a football field. There's no way you could mic these guys up. You know, you want me to tell you how a single play goes? All right. Simple 7-yard completion. All right. And a guy gets hit at the end of that play. And it's a nice hit. And this is just one play. And this is how the back and forth goes. The guy that makes the hit gets up and says, that shit ain't working today. Yeah. And so the receiver pops up. That won't shit. That won't shit. Bring it. That won't shit. That's 18 beep, 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 beep. Like, you're not hearing anything but beeps. You know? Who wants to hear that? Now, the piped in crowd noise is going to be a little cheesy, but guess what? It's a very small price to pay to actually see professional tackle football being played in front of my eyes. I'll take piped in crowd noise. Hell, I'll take silence. I'll take nothing but the commentators telling me what's going on as I'm watching it. You know, it'll be just like muting the TV, which I don't do. But if I have to, I can mute the TV and just watch. All right. At the end of the day, I just want to see football. No, it's not going to be the same. And I don't honestly think the lack of crowds really benefits the Redskins. I think they feed off of the crowd, whether you're home, away. You know, yeah, you'd like to have a crowd that's pro for your team. But at the end of the day, these professional athletes feed off of the energy of the crowd, whether it be negative or positive. You want to go against us? All right, the team bands together. It's us against the world. They don't like us. They don't want to see us win. Let's go out and show them. So you feed off of that energy, you know? And, you know, sometimes the silence of a crowd is worth everything, you know? To shut a crowd up and to see them getting out of their seats and leaving as you're dominating at the end of a game and you getting to stand up on the bench and tell them, get the hell out of here. Leave, bye. See you later, drive safe. As they're getting up and leaving because you're winning the game and they know it's over. They feed off of that. That's fun. That's missing if the crowd isn't there. So I would love it if the crowd were in attendance, but obviously that's not feasible. And so would I prefer the piped in crowd noise or the players? Obviously, I would prefer the players, but you're not going to hear anything if you mic up a player or two. All you're going to hear is a bunch of cussing. Trust me, I've played on, and I haven't even played at a high level, but I know what goes on a football field. It's a lot of shit talking, and it's a lot of back and forth, you know? The referees even talk shit on the field, if you can believe it. You know, the referees are talking some cold, hard cash out there. They got to be tough, too. These are some big behemoths. They got to separate, and they got to do it with a stern voice. They can't come up, okay, guys, separate. Come on, guys. That's enough. No, they got to come in. Hey, y'all cut that shit out. Hey, that's enough. All right? You can't mic these guys up. You know, when they do mic'd up, it's cool because the NFL is able to then edit it. You know, even when they mic a player up on ESPN on Monday Night Football, which they do, and they play it, they get to edit the audio first. They get to figure out what they can and can't play. Same thing when you hear the mic'd up segments on NFL Network when they do those shows where they just play these players mic'd up. Or you watch one of those shows like the Rewind show that they have on that one network. And you get to, you see, the players and you get the in-depth look at the game from, the sideline cameras and NFL films. And then you get some of the audio of the players. Yeah, they get to edit all of that stuff. If you put these players on the field with mics, you don't get to edit anything. All you have is a dump button. And every time you hear a curse word, which is going to be every millisecond, you're hitting the dump button, dump button, dump button. That's not going to work. I'd rather them just pipe the noise in, to be honest with you. So I obviously prefer to have crowds there, and I think the Redskins would benefit from a crowd being there, whether that crowd is pro-Redskins or not. But at the end of the day, no crowds are going to be involved, and so they're going to have to figure it out, and I think they're going to end up piping in some crowd noise to go along with the commentators calling the game. Let's see. Thank you for the super chat and doubling up, King of the North. Got another super chat, this one here from Leo Suarez. Thank you for the super chat, Leo Suarez. Greatly appreciate you. Leo writes, Del Rio is going to make Montez Sweat Mac 52 good, and don't sleep on Kerrigan in this new system either. Del Rio knows how to move a chessboard. I hope you're right. The hope is that Del Rio is looking around and saying, man, I got an abundance of riches here. Maybe the most talent I've ever had on one defensive line that I've coached. And now, that's a good problem to have if he's saying, I got to figure out how to get all these guys involved. Great. That's what you want. That's exactly what you want. As a play caller, as a coach, you want the problem of having too much of something versus not having enough of it. You really find out how good of a coach you are when you don't have enough of something and you got to start improvising. That's why we think Bill Belichick's one of the best, because when you really look at Bill Belichick's defenses outside of the secondary, which he absolutely makes sure he keeps locked and stocked, safety position and corners, especially the cornerback position. Give Belichick a shutdown corner and one safety, and he'll go to work on your ass. He'll figure out the rest of it. Doesn't need an elite rusher, doesn't need an elite linebacker, although it helps, to have guys like Dante Hightower or Jamie Collins in his prime. Yeah, it helps to have Teddy Bruschi and those guys, Willie McGinnis. Yeah, those are cool to have, but give me Ty Law, give me Asante Samuel, or give me Stephon Gilmore, and I'll show you something. I'll show you how I work. And if you notice, when Belichick wins his championships, it's always with an elite corner. So you don't always have to have the most talent if you know what you're doing. Del Rio knows what he's doing, and now you're giving him a wealth of talent. Now I'm anxious to see how he utilizes all of these guys because, again, our linebacker core isn't the most talented. I want to reiterate that because I think some of you think our linebackers are supremely gifted and talented. Even if Reuben Foster comes back, you don't know what Reuben Foster you're getting. And Reuben Foster wasn't elite for the 49ers. He was good, but he was always hurt. So we don't have a great linebacking core. We have promise. We have some guys that we think have some upside, but we haven't seen anybody produce at a high level. Ultimately, Thomas Davis is probably our best linebacker, and Cole Holcomb seems to be the guy with the most promise right now. Now, we all like Sean Dion Hamilton. We all think that Ryan Anderson is on the come, maybe. But let's be honest with ourselves. We really don't know that the linebackers are all that great. They're probably good at best. So, for all intents and purposes, this defensive line is going to have to lead this football team on the defensive side in order to maximize this defense. So, again, when you look at this defense, it starts up front. And if Del Rio can get these guys to party up front, there's going to be a hell of a fiesta. It's going to be a party in the back end. All right? That back end, boy, Landon Collins and Fab Moreau and all of these guys are going to have a party back there. Kendall Fuller and Sean Davis and even Darby might get in the mix, okay? But it starts up front with these guys. And if Del Rio can get them playing at a high level, everything else will fall into place. Thank you for the super chat, Leo Suarez. Got another super chat. This one is from Landry Balbin. Thank you for the super chat, Landry Balbin. Greatly appreciate you. Landry writes, who will honestly start if you were Scott Turner, Kelvin Harmon, or AGG? And why? What do you think of AGG or Cam Sims switching to tight end? So this was a question that we were going to save for next week's program, honestly, because we're going to do the wide receivers next week. But since you asked now, let's talk about it. I think Kelvin Harmon gets the nod. And that's just because he has experience in this league. And I get it. Everybody's coming in to this new offense and it's new for everyone. But here's the biggest difference. Kelvin Harmon has played in the NFL. He's gotten his feet wet. He knows the speed of the game. He understands what is going to be asked of him. All right. Maybe a different offense, but he ran a similar offense last year. Different terminology, but a corner route's a corner route. A curl's a curl. You know, a 12 back to 10's a 12 back to 10. Run it once, seen them all, you know. So he's more familiar with everything. The timing and the rhythm of a play, you know, how things work. Whereas AGG, the Gandhi man, Antonio Gandy Golden, is coming from Liberty. And so coming from Liberty, he didn't run a bunch of stuff, all right? He ran a bunch of physically imposing routes, stop route, all right? Back shoulder fade, 9-ball, all right? And then there was the old, I'm going to put my nutsack on your helmet ball as well. Like, he wasn't, and he ran some slants, all right? He wasn't running a post corner. He wasn't running a post corner post. He wasn't running a bench route. You know, he wasn't running a 14-yard dig route over the middle of the field. Kelvin Harmon did last year. So he's got the upper hand, and there's no offseason. So AGG is behind the 8-ball. You know, that doesn't mean he can't produce in his rookie season. It just means it may take him a little while. Whereas Harmon is ready to hit the ground running. And Kelvin Harmon has experience with Dwayne Haskins. There's a rapport there. So honestly speaking, to me, it's a no-brainer. Kelvin Harmon, it's his job to lose opposite of Terry McLaurin right now. All right. T-Mac on one side, and on the other side, to me, it's Kelvin Harmon right now. That's subject to change, but as I've mentioned with Sadiq Charles, it's his job to lose at left tackle. You know, we'll see if he gets it. It's Kelvin Harmon's job to lose opposite of T-Mac on the other side. We'll see what happens. So, thank you for the super chat, Landry Balbin. And we'll talk more about that in greater detail next week when we talk wide receivers. Got another super chat. This one is from my man, Cruisin26. What's going on, Cruisin? Love this guy. Big Giants fan. We've been chopping it up for years. Cruisin26, thank you for the super chat, who writes, this is a big blue invasion. Don't be afraid. We ain't never scared, all right? Never scary, all right? But I will tell you, I do respect Joe Judge, man. I like that guy a lot. Anxious to see what he does in New York, but don't get it twisted. Ain't nobody afraid, all right? Never been scared of the Giants. I ain't never been, and probably never will be, all right? Just so you know. Got another super chat, but thank you for the super chat, Cruisin26. That's my guy. Got another super chat. This one from Del Monte Corbett. Thank you for the super chat, Del Monte. Greatly appreciate you. Del Monte writes, I like Matt better than Payne. Your thoughts? Hashtag HTTR. Yeah. Remember when we had this discussion about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, maybe a month ago, where we said if you had to keep 5 players, who would those 5 guys be? Matt Ioannidis was one of those 5 guys that I would keep. You know, and I think I would go back and I would revise that list. Dwayne Haskins has to be on that list. He has to be, right? I went back and watched that video about 2 weeks ago, and I said I was tripping. There's no way you could leave Dwayne Haskins off that list. You're insane. I was tripping. But I told you then I liked Matt Ioannidis better than Daron Payne. But remember, I never wanted the Redskins. I'm not going down this path with you tonight, but I never wanted the Redskins to draft Daron Payne in the first place. You guys know this already. If you've been watching me long enough, you know I was not excited about that draft pick. We could have had some impactful guys on this team right now, but it didn't happen. He's here and he's a Redskin, and we move forward. But I like Matt Ioannidis better than Daron Payne too, but let's not get it twisted. Daron Payne is the more talented of the two. It's just that Matt Ioannidis has figured it out a little bit faster, and he's been in the league longer. Give Daron Payne some time. Maybe he'll get to Matt Ioannidis status at some point. This is only his third season in the league. Ioannidis is on his second contract, so he's been in the league a little while. So you got to give him some time. So we'll see. But you should like Matt Ioannidis more than Daron Payne right now because he's produced at a higher level to this point of his career than that of Daron Payne. So thank you for the super chat. Del Monte, greatly appreciate you. Got another super chat. This one is from DCJ. Thank you for the super chat, DCJ. Greatly appreciate you. DCJ writes, Yo, Lou, I'm late. Appreciate the love on the statement a few weeks ago and the homies on the response. Appreciate you. He says, as Indian and black, I'm sick and tired of hearing the topic. So this is a guy that actually has Indian blood coursing through his veins, okay? And, some people will say, well, he's a Redskins fan. Of course he's going to not care. That's not true. If this really affected him, and I can't speak for him, so I shouldn't. But if he really cared, he wouldn't support the name. Let's see what he says. I might be jumping the gun, and he may not support the name. He says, skins only get brought up when they're losing. Your thoughts? So, no, I don't think it's only when they're losing. I think this is really a situation where people do not think the name is right. And they have every right to feel that way. Again, I don't like when people feel like they can tell other people how they should feel. All right? Look, if there's a white person over here that doesn't like black people, that's fine. He doesn't have to like black people as long as he's not hurting any black people. I don't like the fact that he doesn't like black people, but guess what? That's his prerogative, right? I don't like the fact that he doesn't like black people, but guess what? I can't tell that man how to feel. If that's the way he feels, fine. As long as he's not hurting anybody, you hope that he's not spreading that slanderous behavior, and that thought process and corrupting other people's thoughts. But if he is, what can you do, right? That's his prerogative. But I can't tell anybody how to feel. But I can tell you this. I don't want you telling me how I should react to something. All right? Don't tell me I should be outraged by something. Let me decipher whether I'm outraged by this or not. Especially if I'm of the minority group that is being affected. If I and my constituents who are actually supposed to be affected by this say that we're not, you shouldn't keep telling me that I should be. That's the problem I have with the Redskins name, is that everyone else except the people that actually should be offended are offended. So guess what? In turn, I don't care because your opinion doesn't matter. If you're not Indian, then you don't get to decide who should do what. If the Indians banded together and said, hey, we're tired of the Redskins name, it has to go. And it's overwhelming. And you keep hearing this everywhere you go. The Redskins, the Washington Post, there have been multiple polls and studies done. And it always comes back the same. They don't have a problem with the name. So if that's the case, why is everybody else telling us, hey, y'all got to change this, man. It's racist. Says who? Who are you getting this from? That's my question. I don't think it has anything to do with the Redskins being good or not, because If the Redskins were good and they were in the limelight, I think you might even get more people stepping up and saying, hey, they need to change the name. So I just think it's a matter of people just thinking something is wrong and thinking it needs to change. And, it is what it is. Thank you for the super chat, DCJ. Greatly appreciate you, man. King of the North, thank you for tripling up. Greatly appreciate you, King of the North. Thank you once again for tripling up. My man, King of the North, writes, only way I see the name changing is if players start refusing to play for us because of the name. A player will say that one day. Watch. That was the thought about Colin Kaepernick. There was this, debate on whether the Redskins, remember, we've been in the quarterback wilderness for decades. So that's nothing new. But, when you get to the point when Dirty Ches and Josh Johnson are starting games for you, you're like, seriously? Colin Kaepernick is out there. Like, what are we doing right now? And when people bountied that about, there was a separate conversation where people were like, Colin Kaepernick's kind of progressive. He's a guy that stands for social justice. You sure that he would even play for you? You're not. Are you 100% sure that somebody sticks a mic in his face? And these are questions that you got to ask people that you're about to draft too, because I remember when Josh Rosen was coming into the draft and he was very outspoken about various topics, including against the president, Donald Trump. And one of the comments that came up was, what if this guy was like, I wouldn't play for the Redskins because of their name? Okay, cool. Those are the guys you stay away from. You don't want that kind of negative publicity. And as you mentioned, that's one way to, get, to bring about changes if the players were to, and that's why you're seeing change in the league right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, because the players stepped up. When the players all band together, remember, we want to make it out to be this owner-driven league, and the owners, they run the show. But there's no show without the players. Let's be clear about that. If there are no players, then there is no product. So if the players all band together and they're all on one accord, see, the first time around when Colin Kaepernick did this, it was taboo, and there were only a select few players doing it. So the league was able to sweep it under the rug. All right, y'all get over here and y'all keep it quiet. And so y'all messing up our money, and these sponsors don't like this. And so there weren't enough players willing to take that step forward. Now, with all of this outrage, everybody's ready to jump on board. And so now the league says, let us get in front of this, because our players have made their voice loud and clear and have made it heard loud and clear. And so we've got to get out in front of this. If players were to say we won't play for the Redskins, and there's a band of players that do this, then maybe you'll see a change. But I just don't see that happening, because, again, I don't think the players themselves see the name as being racist. That's the thing. If this were an issue, it would have been brought up by players by now. I just don't see this happening. At least not with this generation. Maybe the next generation it's a problem. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't get it. I don't see that happening. But you're absolutely spot on. That would probably be the only way the name changes, to be honest with you. Let's see if we got any more super chats. And we do. Next super chat is from Martin Matthews, my man, Double M. Thank you for the super chat, Double M. As always, greatly appreciate you, Double M. Thank you again. Double M writes, hey, Louie, things to worry about. Trump still in office, police brutality, racism in the world and in sports. Leave Snyder and the Redskins alone. Now, do you think DN from Germany will make the team? No, I don't. But I think he has a great story. And before we even get into any of that, you're absolutely right. And that's my issue, is that, and that's what the Indians themselves have said. Look, man, there are so many other pressing issues out here. Even if we were upset in the slightest by the name, man, that shit is so far down the list of things we want to get done that it's not even worth talking about, And so I'm with you. and I talked about this on my podcast, so I'm not going to do it here. If you want to hear my thoughts on a lot of this stuff, it's on the podcast. So check that out. But I'm with you. Leave us out of this. We got nothing to do with this, but we're going to get dragged through the mud with this because we always do. And it's not going to stop. Okay? So that's why I told you guys, you need to have very, very, you have to have very unsensitive ears. All right? My ears and my eyes are very, very, they're very rough. Okay? I can take a lot of things because I've seen a lot of things. I've heard a lot of things, especially when it comes to the Redskins name. I'm not affected. You know why? And the reason I'm able to feel confident in my beliefs is because of the facts and what they state. And then Daniel Snyder has professed that the name's not changing. So I don't have anything to worry about. If this were in the hands of the government, then maybe I would be a little bit unnerved. I would be a little bit unnerved. But that's not the case. Dan Snyder holds the key, and he's not worried about this, and he shouldn't be. But the defensive end from Germany, it's a great story. I think the Redskins are one of, 7 teams that have a player from overseas on their squad. And I think teams are now, the league is trying to, have that international flair to it and add some guys that wouldn't necessarily get a shot, but, getting them on a roster, getting them in practices, allowing them to be involved and have a shot that way. You saw a guy in Carolina, in Efe Obada, that came into the league from over in England and had an impact for the Panthers and 2 years ago. And so, there are players across the pond that can play. They just need exposure and opportunities. And we saw the Germany wide receiver that was a rugby guy, or not rugby, but the Germany wide receiver that got drafted. He's now with the Cincinnati Bengals trying to become a tight end. There are guys like that are talented, but they just don't have enough experience. We saw the Eagles take the Jordan Mailata out, the ex-rugby player that's huge, like 6'8", 350 pounds, a ridiculous athlete, but not enough experience, and he's still trying to figure out how to play the left tackle position. But, you get these guys over here, you get them experience. I think it's a good thing. He's not going to make the football team, though. I don't see him making the football team. I don't. But thank you for the super chat, Martin Matthews. Greatly appreciate it. DCJ with another super chat. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, DCJ. Greatly appreciate you. DCJ writes, I think if the Skins are healthy, better than last few years, Skins match up with anybody and have a legitimate playoff or wild card potential. And in Haskins, he's going to ball and all the hate in the air. Your thoughts? I don't think that the Redskins match up with anybody if they're healthy. I think they could match up with a lot of teams. And if this defense, I'll tell you this much. If we find out early in the season, and we're going to go with your premise, assuming health. And we're going to find out very early in the season. We got some really good offenses early in the season. You got first of all, you got Philadelphia, you got Arizona, you got Cleveland, and you got the Baltimore Ravens. All right. That's among the best offenses in football right there in a 4-game stretch to start the season off. All right. So if you're able to hold those offenses down somewhat and you're in those ball games, you know what that tells me? Maybe we can play with anybody. All right. But if there's an ass whooping in there or two, then that lets you know we can't play with just anybody. But as Rivera said, look, we may start off slow, and there may be some ass whoopings early in the season, some uncharacteristic Ron Rivera ass whoopings. Because generally he didn't get his ass whooped in Carolina very often. All right. Every now and again, there was a spot ass whooping in there. But for the most part, his team's pretty much competitive week in, week out. But he's already come out and said, look, and he's not saying that we're going to lose games and we're going to get our ass whooped, but he's saying, look, I expect my team to be playing at a very high level as we get to the latter portion of the season. They'll know me. I'll know them. They'll know what to expect from me. I'll know what to expect from them. And we'll have a better sense of each other by the time we hit that back end of the schedule. And so what he's essentially telling you without saying it is, hey, there could be some bumps and lumps early on in the season that we'll have to take because we're learning each other and we didn't have a full off season. And so there's a lot of things that we've got to iron out. And as we continue to grow together and we start learning what we have, we'll get better. And maybe at that point of the season, I may feel different about this team. And I may feel like, yeah, maybe we can compete with just about anybody out there. All right. But to say that we could compete with the Chiefs or the Ravens to start off the season, I don't think that's the case. But in any event, I think Haskins is going to prove a lot of people wrong this year, and I can't wait to see that. I love his focus. I love what he's putting forth this offseason in terms of his work ethic. We see that he's working his ass off. I've heard nothing but good things from the coaching staff about him soaking up this offense, listening to him talk himself about this offense and how it's a number system, which we talked about on this show about a month and a half ago about, the Air Coryell system being a number system versus the West Coast system that Jay Gruden ran, which is heavy on verbiage, lots of words. The play call could be upwards of 16 words for one play call, and you're tagging this and you're tagging that. And so there's so many different things going on, whereas a number system, it's easy to spit it out. Get out of the huddle, get to the line of scrimmage, see what the defense is doing, and be able to make checks and different things and have the time to be able to do that because you can get in and out of the huddle because of the call being quicker. So I just love where Dwayne is, and I think he's going to blow up, this year and show a lot of people that they doubted him and they shouldn't have. And I don't think the Redskins are competing for anything meaningful this year. Again, I could be wrong. Every year there's a team that you don't expect, like Buffalo last year, that you don't expect, like San Francisco even last year, that you don't see coming. And, out of nowhere, here comes this team. They win 10, 11 games, and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? I don't think we're that, though. When you look at those two teams, they had something in common. A coaching staff that had been in place for the last 3 years. That's not what we have here. This is a first-year head coach in a new organization with a bunch of new players, with a second-year quarterback, question marks on the roster, including one of the most important positions at left tackle. Even left guard is up for grabs at this point. It's too many question marks, not enough answers. I don't see the Redskins competing for anything meaningful this year, but doesn't mean that they won't be in ball games and won't have a chance. Thank you for the super chat. Got another super chat. This one from my man JP, John Perez. Thank you for doubling up. Double up. Thank you for doubling up, JP. Greatly appreciate you. My man JP writes, I feel like the linebackers are going to benefit from Chase Young's impact the most. Potentially, I think the rest of the guys on the D-line will. I think if those guys ball out on the D-line, then I think you see the byproduct then trickle to the secondary. The next group that I think benefits is the secondary, and then the linebackers benefit afterwards, I think. Because the faster the pass rush hits home, the faster quarterbacks have to speed up their process, the more likely it is they make a mistake, the more likely it is a secondary member is able to capitalize off of that mistake. And maybe it's the linebackers that capitalize off those mistakes as well. But I think the guys around him on the defensive line and vice versa, as someone mentioned earlier, not only are the other guys on the defensive line going to benefit from Chase Young's presence, but Chase Young's going to benefit from their presence as well. So I think it goes both ways. But I think the defensive line and the guys around him are going to benefit first. Then you're going to see the secondary potentially benefit. And then I think the backers come there after. But nonetheless, I think there's going to be a lot of people being benefited by the presence of a dominant Chase Young. Not just Chase Young showing up. That's not good enough. He's got to dominate. And then you will start to see a trickle-down effect where offenses have to adjust what they do, how they game plan for the Redskins, and that leads to other guys having opportunities to take advantage. So thank you for that super chat, JP. Let's see if we got any more super chats. And we do have another super chat. This one here from Marius Williams. Thank you for the super chat, Marius Williams. Really appreciate you. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, Marius, who writes, look, Skins fans, if we don't get another wide receiver to help out Terry this year, it's going to be like the Santana Moss years where the D just going to roll coverage his way. Love the show, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, Marius. Thank you for your support and the super chat. I hear where you're coming from. And you know what? That sentiment that you just made and that statement that you just put forth is what the outside media has been preaching, that the Redskins don't have any talent at receiver, except for Terry McLaurin. I played the clip last week on the show. You heard what a national NFL writer, Jason Lockhamfora, had to say. He said, who else are you afraid of outside of a right guard and one wide receiver? Right guard being Brandon Sheriff, one wide receiver being Terry McLaurin. He said, you got nothing else on that offense. Nobody else is a guy that you're afraid of. No one else are you game planning to stop. So the outside media thinks the same exact way that you do, which is why maybe the Redskins were in the market for an Amari Cooper in the offseason. But at the end of the day, I think they're wrong. I think most Redskins fans, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think most Redskins fans think that they're wrong. They think that we have talent, that guys can step up, that guys will step up and make plays, and that Terry won't be alone this year. That Steven Sims is on the cusp of blowing up. I really, truly do believe that. Maybe Harmon and AGG aren't ready to take that next step yet. Maybe that's the case. But I think Harmon is, I think that Steven Sims is ready. I do. I really do. I think Steven Sims is ready. And we're going to talk about this at great lengths next week when we take a hard look at the wide receiver position. That's probably going to be my favorite show. So make sure you tune in next week. I got to decide how I'm going to do it, because if you haven't been following me and you haven't listened to my podcast, I'm moving. So because I'm moving, I don't know how my setup's going to be. I may have to push that show back, or I may have to do it from my cellular device. We'll see. But we're going to do the receivers at some point. And I'm going to really profess my love for Steven Sims and his potential, not just in 2020, but moving forward. So I don't think that's the case, Marius. But I understand where you're coming from. If you don't believe in Steven Sims, if you don't believe in AGG, yeah, you know me, and you don't believe in Kelvin Harmon, then and furthermore, you don't believe in Scott Turner, then maybe you do need another receiver. I, however, do believe in those guys. I do believe there is talent on this roster at the receiver position, and I don't think Terry McLaurin is going to be alone. What I do think the Redskins need is a field-stretching, playmaking tight end. You really want to free up Terry McLaurin. Get a tight end that can take some of that coverage away from him over the middle of the field. You take that safety away, and now Terry's got one-on-one because the safety's eyes are on that tight end that's been kicking their ass all day, or that's been tearing the league a new asshole. And so now when he sees that tight end coming up the seam, now Terry's got one-on-one outside when that safety should be back deep, but he's not because his eyes are in the wrong place because that tight end is making plays. That's what we're lacking. That's what we don't have. And that's what I think we ultimately need to get. But I think until we get those things, or that one extra item, I think these other guys will suffice. I think they are more talented than people are giving them credit for. Thank you for the super chat, Marius Williams. Got another super chat. This one is from Billy Ampifo, my man Billy Amp. Thank you for the super chat, Billy Amp. As always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the super chat, Billy Amp, who writes, there are Native Americans who are offended by the name, and they created an ad campaign against it in 2014. He says, and they even suggested similar names such as Braves or Seminoles, which are more respectful. I'm not saying there aren't any Native Americans that aren't offended by the name, all right? There just aren't enough of them. And I don't want to silence their voice. Their voice matters too, all right? But if the vast majority of them don't have a problem with the name, then I understand why you don't change it. There's a lot of things. It's not just as simple as, oh, change the name. All right, we'll rebrand them. We'll call ourselves the Washington Braves or the Washington Warriors, and we'll rebrand. Well, it's not that simple. There are people that have been loyal customers of this product for over 30, 40, 50 years, and they're not subscribing to the Washington Warriors. You know, there are fans that aren't jumping on board with the Warriors. Or if you change the name, they're done with the Redskins. They're now a Ravens fan. All right, and you could easily say, well, they're not real fans. That's not actually how it goes. And so, look, I get it. There are people out there that are offended by the name. And if I made this point earlier when I said that there weren't a lot of them and you misconstrued it as there weren't any, I apologize for that, because there are some people out there that are Native American that don't appreciate the name Redskins. All right, there are a lot of people out there that do feel that way, but they're the minority, and that's the issue, is that they're in the minority. You know, if they were the majority, because remember, like I said, I made a video where I was like, man, maybe we need to switch this thing up. You know, if there are actually Native Americans out there and they're in droves and in hordes and they're outraged by this name, then maybe we need to start considering moving on from the Redskins moniker. Well, I came to find out that that group exists, but they're very small. You know, that number isn't as great as a lot of people made it out to be. And these polls, even though these polls don't, include all Native Americans, it's a good enough sample size. And so, there's a case to be made. I understand that. But at the same time, I just don't think that there are enough. If there were more out there that had a problem with this and it was overwhelming, then something needs to be done. But if it's not, then, I don't think you make the change, because let's just say, and this may sound harsh, all right, but it is what it is. Let's say they're 20% of the Native American population. No, let's go with 25%. It's easier to digest. It's a quarter of the Native American population. Let's say 25% of them are outraged by the name. That's a lot, right? Still a fourth of that population, but there's 3/4 of that population that either could care less or don't have a problem with it. And to me, that's not enough. 25% isn't enough to get the kind of change that is warranted to change the name of an NFL franchise. It's one thing to change the name of a middle school, or it's one thing to change the name of a company that is a 2-year startup. This is a franchise that's been around since 1933, okay? Now, I think they started out as the Braves, and then they ultimately became the Redskins like in the 40s at some point, But to me, that's just not enough to make the switch. With all the history that's here, I would need more than that. It'd have to be closer to 50-50, So, appreciate the comment, Billy Amp. Thank you for the super chat. Let's see. Got another super chat. This one here from DCJ tripling up. DCJ, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, bruh. Thank you for tripling up. Thank you for your contribution. DCJ writes, 2 questions. If the Skins struggle, why not load up on Haskins like Locke on speed and etc.? Second, why do the media never bring up other teams in sports? The only Skins in race relations. Chiefs win Super Bowl, people quiet. They've brought up the Chiefs in the past. They brought up the Indians, the Braves, Florida State. The Braves were under scrutiny in the playoffs. I'm a Braves fan. They were under scrutiny in the playoffs last year because one of the players for the Cardinals was offended. He's part Indian, and during the 7th inning, the Braves always do the tomahawk chop. It's one of our traditions. And, during the 7th inning stretch, now it's much doper now than it ever has been because they turn out all the lights at the stadium, and everybody turns on their cell phones and they do the chop. And so it's just dope. And he was offended by that. And he took to social media, and then some people piggybacked off of it, and they were trying to get the Braves to stop with the chant, oh, and, stop with the chanting and all of that stuff. And, so other teams, the Indians had to change their mascot. Remember, they had the cheesy Indian with the ridiculous blackface looking, cheesing Indian, like almost like a caricature. They had to get rid of that, So other teams have had to do things, but they haven't had to get rid of their name. You know what I mean? So it is what it is, man. At the end of the day, I look at this situation, and there are always going to be people on both sides of this fence, both ends of the spectrum. And, both sides are going to have great points. When it's all said and done, I don't think anything needs to be done, at least not at this moment. I'm open-minded. I've always been when it comes to this topic. I just don't think there's enough right now that suggests that anything needs to be done. And if people just want to come with their opinions, those are fine. That's not enough to force anything to be done. And as far as Haskins is concerned and loading up talent for him, like the Broncos did with Drew Lock this year, that's great. If you can afford to do that, to just stockpile a bunch of talent. And maybe if the Redskins, let's just say that the Redskins struggle, and you said that in your comment. Let's say they struggle this year, and the biggest part of the struggle, let's say the defense was really good. Let's say the defense was ranked 13th in the league. They only gave up 22.7 points a game, and they were in ball games, but they just couldn't score. They only scored 19.8 points a game. They struggled on the offensive side of the football. All right, so let's say that's the problem. And part of the reason was just like the two commenters ago said that if we don't get a receiver opposite of Terry, we're going to struggle. And that comment was from Marius. And so like Marius said, we don't have enough opposite of Terry. And so we don't have the ability to stretch the football field vertically. Teams are doubling them up, and we struggle. Well, if that's what happens, then the response to that should be, hey, let's go get... And Dwayne plays well, I might add. He plays well despite teams taking away Terry McLaurin. But it's obvious he needs help. Then the response to that should be, hey, let's go get Dwayne some weapons. That should be the direct response to that. Hey, let's double down on tight end. Let's get two of those things. Matter of fact, get one in free agency, and let's get two of them things in the draft. Let's get us two more receivers. All right, let's go out and really give him the ammunition he needs to be successful. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. I don't think we need to do that. I laugh at the people that have this notion that the Redskins didn't do anything to help Dwayne this year. They drafted a receiver. Sure, they could have drafted a tight end. They should have drafted a tight end. I actually think they missed the mark there. There are opportunities to get their hands on tight ends in this draft, and they just didn't. And maybe the guy, I really think, in my heart of hearts, I don't think I've said this on this program. Maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I really think in my heart of hearts, the guy that the Redskins wanted was Devin Asiasi out of UCLA. That was the guy that I wanted. I think that's the guy that they wanted. Because they had their pick of any of these tight ends. All right. Pretty much at the third round. Outside of Cole Kmet and Devin Asiasi, every one of these tight ends were there at the start of the third round when the Redskins had a selection and they decided to go with Antonio Gibson. They could have went tight end there. If they liked Adam Troutman or if they liked Harrison Bryant or any of those guys, they were available. And the Redskins passed on every single one of them. I think the guy that if he were there at the top of the third round, they would have taken was Devin Asiasi. Maybe it was Cole Kmet. If either one of them were there, they would have pulled the trigger. Neither one of them were there. They bypassed on the entire tight end position. That's the one I thought they missed out on. But to say that they didn't do anything, what AGG is nothing? Is that what you're saying? Is Antonio Gibson nothing? I get it. He's classified as a running back. Don't think for 1 second they're not going to throw the football to him. If you think that, you're sadly mistaken. They did some things to help Dwayne Haskins. And there's already talent on the team. So I definitely beg to differ with people that think that this team lacks talent and there's not enough around Dwayne Haskins. Could there be more? Absolutely. We don't have any tight ends right now. There may be one on the roster that we don't know about right now, but as of right now, we don't have a tight end. Yeah, I get it. We don't have a left tackle. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't. I get it. But to sit here and say we don't have anything around Dwayne, that's disrespectful to the dudes that's on the roster that do have talent. And they're going to prove it this year. That's why I don't worry about talking about it so much. All right? I let the actions speak louder than the words. And so these guys are going to go out and ball this year. I've got no doubts in my mind. We're going to talk more about that when we get to the receiver position. But I love it. Thank you for the super chat, DCJ. Got another super chat from Landry Balbin. Boom! We doubling up. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Landry Balbin, who writes, who do you see being our 5 captains? Jonathan Allen, Ryan Kerrigan, Landon Collins. If Brandon Sheriff he's going to be on the team. Brandon Sheriff is 4. And my 5th would probably be Thomas Davis, coming in as a newcomer, but familiar to what Ron Rivera once done. He will be a captain. Those are my 5 captains this season. And you could throw Alex Smith in there if you like, but I don't think they want guys that are going to actually play, I think. So those are my 5 captains. Thank you for the super chat. Got another super chat. This one from DCJ. For DCJ in the house. Appreciate you, DCJ. Thank you for your 4th super chat of the night. DCJ writes, as a hometown Yanks and Nats fan, reigning champs, I feel we got to go back to back. If no season, your thoughts. Capitals bringing one back on the reboot. Time for the Skins. Well, I'm not a fan of any of those teams. I'm a Braves fan, as I just told you. So the Nats winning the World Series made me sick to my stomach. I'm not a hockey fan, so I could care less about the Capitals, to be honest with you. But I don't have any problems with them winning. But I'm not going to lie to you. When they won, I was pissed off because I wanted the Redskins to win a chip before any of those teams in D.C. But when they won, it was cool. It was good to see Ovi get one. You know, he's a legend in the game. And, you know, I would have hated to have seen him go down in that Charles Barkley, you know, Dan Marino conversation. So it was good to see him get one. But it's time for the Skins. It's been past due for the time. It's not even about winning a chip. It's about even being in the discussion to win a chip. That's the thing that's been frustrating about the Redskins. We haven't even been close. You know, we're not even in a discussion to win a chip. You know, it's one thing to come close and just fall short. You know, NFC Championship game. You know, Super Bowl appearance here and there. But just a championship game would be nice every now and again. We can't even get past the first round of the damn playoffs when we do get there. And that's once every blue damn moon. So, you know, it's long overdue for the Skins to get a chip. You know, but how about we just be competitive and end the discussion? How about we be a team that you look at and say, hey, man, this could be the year the Redskins win it all. When's the last time you said that out of your mouth and actually weren't just being a homer, but you actually felt that way? I got to go back to 2012. You know, as that season got rolling and we got on that 7-game winning streak back into the season, after we beat the Cowboys, the Giants and the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks to wrap up that season, to win the division, I said, why can't we, the playoffs in the NFC that year was, the Falcons were the 1 seed and the 49ers were the 2 seed. Or it was vice versa. The 49ers with Kaepernick were the 1 seed and the Falcons were the 2 seed. I was like, why can't we go to Atlanta and beat them? I remember in that season, we should have beat Atlanta, but Griffin got a concussion. I remember Sean Witherspoon hit him on the sidelines because he couldn't slide. He didn't know how to slide. He got a concussion, and Kirk Cousins came in and threw a back-breaking pick late in that game, and we lost. But we could have beat Atlanta. And we could have went to Atlanta and beat them in the divisional round. And then the 49ers, that's the team I thought that would have beat our ass. Their defense was filthy that year. I don't think we would have been able to run our offense effectively against them, but damn sure would have liked to have tried, you know? But outside of 2012, I never thought the 2015 season we were going anywhere, even though it was nice to win the division. I thought we should have beat Green Bay at home, but I didn't think we were going to go much further than that. You know, those Gibbs teams, Gibbs 2.0, 05 team had a chance because we were good on defense. If we would have beat Seattle that year, and if I'm not mistaken, the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl that year. If we would have beat Seattle, we're in the NFC Championship game. I don't know, maybe we make it to the Super Bowl. But it's been too long since we've been in that discussion. Let's get there, you know? That's my problem. So, anyway, at the end of the day, I myself just want to see them do that. So, all right, that's going to do it. No more super chats. I thank you guys for a magnificent show. A lot of fun. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys in the near future. Make sure that you subscribe to the Louis T Network if you haven't already done so. Make sure that you like this video. Check out the podcast, Louis T Network podcast, new episode up and available wherever podcasts are available. You can get the Louis T Network podcast. And also remember, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington Redskins. I'll figure out what it is that we will do next week for a show. As I said, I'm about to get rid of the cable and the Wi-Fi, so I might have to do the show from my phone, if at all possible. We'll see. I'll figure something out. Make plans for me to be here in some capacity next week. We'll figure it out. In any event, I'm your man Louis T, signing off. You guys, stay safe. Take care of yourselves and those around you. And we will reconvene at a later date and time. And if something happens between now and next Thursday, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. But if not, I'll see you next week. Enjoy your weekend. Take care. Have a good one.
Defensively, you would have loved to